Thank you all so much for joining this evening. This is the October 19th Louisville City Council meeting. I'm Mayor Ashley Stolzman, and because of COVID-19, this meeting is being held electronically and is being recorded. There will be several public comment periods during the meeting, and so when you'd like to speak, there's a raise hand button at the bottom of your panel that you'll see. So go ahead and click that raise hand feature, and we'll see a hand raised, and I'll be able to call on you. Attendees who are calling in by phone can dial *9 and a raised hand will appear on your behalf. When I call on you and the clerk unmutes you, please tell us your name, your address, and then what you'd like to tell us. Each person will have 3 minutes for their comments. And if you'd wish to speak on another topic, just when the next public comment period comes, you'll just need to raise that hand again. Thank you so much for following these directions to help us maintain meeting decorum. So with that, City Clerk Muth, could we please have a roll call?
Mayor Stolzman?
Here.
Councilmember Lay?
Here.
Councilmember Dickinson?
Here.
Councilmember Lipton?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Maloney?
Here.
Councilmember Fahey?
Here.
And Councilmember, I will get Councilmember Brown as soon as he returns.
Yeah, we expect he'll be joining us late this evening. Thank you. And so if folks who are going to be joining us to help us with agenda topics, if you could just turn your cameras off and tell your agenda topic, that would be helpful. Thank you so much. And with that, I'll ask council if there's a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The agenda is approved. So that'll take us to our public comments tonight that are on items that are not on our agenda or items that only appear on our consent agenda. If anyone in the public would care to comment on an item that's not on our agenda or an item that only appears on the consent agenda, please raise your hand and tell us what you'd like to tell us. First in the queue, we have Maxine Most.
Hello, everybody. Maxine Most, 640 West Linden Street. This is more of a comment than a question. I've been out, obviously, talking to people, campaigning, and there is so much confusion in this community about 2A that I was hoping it might be possible for some clarification either at tonight's meeting or via the website on the city website. I've just talked to so many people who can't figure out how it works, what the financial mechanism is, what it means that the city has committed 1.5 million and the LRC has committed 18 million. And there is just so much confusion. So I am just wondering if there's anything that the city council or the staff can do before the election, people have their ballots, to clarify exactly how this 2A is going to financially impact people. That's all I had. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Any other members of the public care to comment this evening? All right, seeing none, that takes us back to our consent agenda. Could I please get a motion from council on the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion of the consent agenda? Just want to point out to council members that the retaining wall contract that we didn't get any bids on earlier in the year is on there to be addressed. Any other discussion of the consent agenda? Councilmember Fahey.
Yes, I just wanted to express my appreciation for the update from the Chamber of Commerce. This is the first time we've gotten that on our agenda, and I think it's wonderful that we're connecting with the Chamber and the business community. So I look forward to more communication with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Fahey. And City Clerk Muth, it looks like Councilmember Fahey's labeled incorrectly on the Zoom. Can you rename her for us, please?
Yes, I can do that for you.
Thank you very much. And if there's no other discussion on the consent agenda, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, everyone. The consent agenda is passed. And that takes us to council informational comments on pertinent items not on the agenda. So I just wanted to let folks know when we get items that are not on our agenda, they're not on our agenda. So we can't discuss them at the meeting, but the city manager might be able to give us a little bit of information on what staff is looking at. So if it seems awkward to folks that are tuning in, I just wanted to explain that we take in all the input and that we can follow up on those things, but they're not on our agenda for discussion. Any other council informational comments on pertinent items not on our agenda? Seeing none, city managers report.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Thank you so much. I wanted to just present to you tonight that included in your packet is the third quarter 2021 Louisville Revitalization Commission report to City Council. And this includes kind of an overview of their activities for the past quarter and some of the meeting minutes from those activities and what they've been working on. So I encourage you to take the opportunity to read through those and hear a little bit more about what's happening with the Revitalization Commission. And Economic Vitality Director Megan Pierce is also on, and she can answer any questions if you have any questions or would like any more information about that.
Thank you for that report. Any questions from council members? Seeing none, anything else, City Manager Davis?
No, I appreciate the comment on the ballot measure, and we will consult further with our city attorney if we're able to provide some additional clarifying information around the facts of the ballot measure.
Thank you, City Manager Davis. And so that takes us to our first item of regular business this evening, 501 Avenue Landmark and Preservation Grant. We'll have a resolution, two resolutions. First, Resolution 71, Series 2021, a resolution approving the Leslie House located at 501 Jefferson Avenue, a historic landmark. And second, Resolution 72, Series 2021, a resolution approving a Historic Preservation Fund grant for the Leslie House located at 501 Jefferson Avenue. I'll open the public hearing and ask council if there are any disclosures. Seeing none, I'll turn it over to staff for a presentation this evening. I think Kim Bauer, our Historic Preservation Planner, is going to take us through this. Good evening.
Good evening. I'll be sharing my screen here. All right, thank you so much. Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and members of council. I have before you this evening a request to landmark 501 Jefferson Avenue, as well as a request for approval of a Historic Preservation Fund grant. There we go. Here in this slide, the image on the left gives you some aerial context of its location at the corner of Jefferson Avenue and Hutchinson Street, as outlined in the white shaded box. On the right, the star indicates the general location within the overall context of the Old Town overlay. This slide shows you both historic and current conditions of the property, with a historic photo from the 1948 Boulder County Assessor's card on the left and a contemporary photo on the right. To first review the landmarks request as outlined per our code, we look at specific criteria for landmarking, including age, its architectural, social, or geographic significance, as well as its physical integrity. Staff finds that 501 Jefferson meets the age and physical integrity requirements, as we know the structure was constructed more than 50 years ago. While we do not know its exact construction date, we do know it was moved to its current location at the latest in 1948, since it is shown at the current location on a 1948 assessor's card, and therefore has been located at 501 Jefferson for at least 73 years. Staff also finds that it meets both the architectural and cultural significance, as it's a bungalow craftsman style, is indicative of other worker homes of the era, as well as a popular style at the time in general. The house is also associated with the historic development of Lewisville, both of Old Town and of mining related housing. And additionally, previous owners have had ties to both the Acme Mining Company and the Rocky Mountain Fuel Company, and the house has had a long lineage with the Leslie family. Just to supply some further context for the grant, the slide now before you lists some of the common work that typically qualifies for grant funds. And as you can see, the proposed work seeking grant funds this evening would fall under the restoration category, as this is a request, as this request is proposing to replace non-original windows with historically sensitive window replacements. For a further breakdown of how the scope of this proposed grant work would meet the grant qualifications, you can see it delineated in this small table before you. The grant request at this time is for the historically sensitive window replacements, as I mentioned, and the table shows the amount of both the fund request as well as the match. So altogether, the total cost proposed will be $14,872 for a matching fund grant request of $7,436, which is under the maximum amount of a matching grant request of $40,000. And with that, therefore, staff recommends approval of both the local landmark designation request and the proposed historic preservation grant application for the Leslie House in the amount of $7,436. And I am happy to answer any questions. And we also have the applicants, Carolyn Ford and Christopher Beam, here as well this evening.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bauer. And so I'll ask the applicant if they wanted to tell us anything this evening before we turn it over to public comment.
Hi. No, we just want to thank you for the consideration and many, many thanks to Kim. She's wonderful and has done a wonderful job with this, and we're excited. So that's about it.
Thank you so much. Any members of the public care to comment on this topic tonight? All right, seeing none, that takes us back over to council questions and comments. I just want to thank the applicant so much for bringing this forward. This is really exciting and a great opportunity, and the community is very grateful to your efforts for doing this for all of us. So thank you. Any other council comments or discussion? Mayor Pro Tem Maloney.
Thank you, Mayor. Planner Kim Bauer, thank you very much for the presentation. As far as I'm concerned, this is exactly the intention of this program. So this is something that I will absolutely support, but I have one silly question first. So the house was built somewhere else and then moved. So do you think it was moved within Lewisville, or do you think it was moved from out of the city?
That's an excellent question. I know that it was, we have kind of the history. So as Bridget Bacon, she does all the histories or the history narratives for both these reports. And then when they go to HPC, and from her research, it looks like it was previously located at, I believe it was Monarch Mine, but one of the mines, and then moved to its current location. And so interestingly enough, we have a lot of homes in Lewisville that have been moved often from mines to then other places, often in Old Town as well. So this would have been one of them. So that's why the timing of the construction date is unknown. But since we have that 1948 assessor's card, it really can help narrow down at least when it was in its current location.
All right, thank you. Mayor, I have a question. Can I make two resolutions at one time?
Let's do one at a time, please.
One at a time. May I make a motion, please?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 71, series 2021.
Thank you. Is there a second?
A second.
Thank you. And so is there discussion of the motion? Councilmember Fahey.
I just wanted to express the same things that Mayor Pro Tem already said. I think our staff did a wonderful job in the presentation. It meets all of the requirements and all of the intention of the Historic Preservation Fund. And so I am 100% behind this landmarking and grant proposal.
All right, thank you. And so we're voting on resolution 71 first. All those in favor of landmarking the house, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries unanimously. And next, could we please have a motion on resolution 72, Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 72, series 2021.
Second. Thank you. There's a second. And so because this is for the grant, I'd ask the city clerk, first, is there any discussion of the motion? Being none, since this is for a grant, I'd ask the city clerk if we could please have a roll call vote.
Councilmember Dickinson?
Yes.
Councilmember Brown?
Yes.
Mayor Stolzman?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Maloney?
Yes.
Councilmember Fahey?
Yes.
Councilmember Lay?
Yes.
Councilmember Lipton?
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. The motion carries unanimously. Looking forward to seeing the work done and the plaque presented and everything. Thank you so much. All right, thank you. That takes us to our next agenda item tonight, which is ordinance number 1816, series 2021, an ordinance adopting by reference the 2021 International Energy Conservation Code with amendments, repealing chapter 15.60 of the Louisville Municipal Code concerning prescriptive energy code and design criteria, and amending title 17 of the Louisville Municipal Code concerning electric vehicle charging infrastructure. This is our second reading and public hearing. It was advertised in the Daily Camera on the 26th of September 2021. And I'll open the public hearing and ask if there are any disclosures tonight. Seeing none, I'll turn it over to staff. This was definitely a group effort and has taken a lot of staff from different departments. And so I'll turn it over, I suppose, to Katie Baum, our sustainability specialist. Hi, Katie.
Hello, good evening, Mayor and council members. I am going to pull up the presentation. All right, can everybody see that?
Yes, we can now.
Okay, great. I am Katie Baum, Sustainability Coordinator with the City of Lewisville. Tonight, I'll be covering the very lengthy titled Ordinance 1816, Series 2021. So as a very brief overview of where we're currently operating as at the city, what is our current building code landscape?
Sorry, Katie, Councilmember Lane, I think you're not on mute. Go ahead, Katie.
Okay, we are currently operating under the 2018 IECC, the International Energy Conservation Code. It was adopted with no appendices. We also operate under a prescriptive energy and design criteria. So within your building code, you often have a prescriptive or a performance pathway, and we operate under a prescriptive, which really sets a minimum acceptable standard, which is also easier for compliance and enforcement. We also have solar readiness requirements for both residential and commercial. I think there, why to the adoption of the 2021 IECC. The IECC is updated about every 3 years, and yet we really haven't seen a significant energy efficiency, increase till this year since 2012. And so on the right, you can see a model code that kind of shows you where the codes are seeing significant increases. And again, kind of reiterates that we really aren't seeing a monumental shift in energy efficiency increases since 2012. In the 2021 IECC, there are a myriad of changes over the 2018 IECC, really heavily focused on the building envelope, HVAC systems, and then also lighting and power. The Department of Energy released in July of this year their analysis of the 2021 IECC and determined that the residential energy code resulted in an average approximate 9.38 savings over the 2018 code. For commercial, those changes are even more robust. So we're really looking across, lighting, power, service, water, heating, HVAC, again, significant increases in building envelope. In that same analysis that was performed in July of 2021, the DOE has determined that the commercial energy code resulted in an approximate 4% savings over the previous version. It's a little bit harder to determine on commercial properties that estimated savings, just because commercial buildings tend to be a little less cookie cutter than residential. The IECC, goes through quite a process to be adopted. There is an appeals process, there are governmental member voting, and I wanted to just highlight, what was originally set by governmental members to be included in the 2021 IECC, and then were actually ultimately removed from the code from the ICC board during the process. That does include gas water heating, required to meet the minimum UEF, water heating systems using gas to not contain burning pilot lights, electrical outlets required by all fossil fuel appliances, and we will discuss that a little bit later, this kind of electric readiness, EV capable or electric vehicle capable or readiness, and then on the commercial side, again, that electric vehicle capable or readiness on residential and commercial. These were ultimately removed from the ICC board. We do have Hope Medina here with us tonight, who is our code consultant, who could probably, if you have questions about that process, delve into it a little bit more. So that's a very brief kind of overview over the IECC, very brief, and then we'll kind of get into Ordinance 1816 and what we're really looking at when we're talking about the ordinance. We do have some amendments from the first reading, and they will be in your lined version that is included in Council's packet. We did update the construction documents to require fuel source and renewable systems pathway. This will make it easier for compliance and a lot easier for staff to walk through those documents. Building electrification, we have added a requirement that all residential or commercial new construction be built to all electric or be built with high efficiency HVAC equipment and with that electric ready infrastructure that was ultimately removed from the original 2020 IECC version brought forth. Gas lighting updated to prohibit gas-fired lighting appliances. These gas-fired lighting appliances are all but really extinct. We don't see them very often. However, the IBC nor the IRC actually prohibits them. Fenestration, and added an exception to allow doors with fenestration that exceeds the maximum allowed requirement. That was an amendment recommended from the Building Code Board of Appeals. Snow loads require roof snow loads to be maintained at 30 pounds per square foot. Again, that was an amendment recommended by the Building Code Board of Appeals. And then we do have EV charging. We updated so that the provisions are enforced at the time of building permit as asked in the first reading. So we'll go over, what we're looking at when we're looking at Ordinance 1816. We realize there's a lot in there. So first and foremost, we adopt the 2020 IECC with amendment. So we are adopting the 2021 IECC for residential and commercial new construction and amends the code to require prescriptive energy criteria. So again, staying consistent with what we already have and really allows us the easiest path forward on compliance. Solar Readiness adopts the Solar Ready Zone Appendices for residential, commercial, and requiring that for multifamily. This does not require solar to be installed, but it does require the space for installing, conduit pathways, adequate roof structure, capacity, and shading requirements. Electric vehicle readiness. This is probably one of the biggest components of the ordinance you see before you. And so as a very brief and quick kind of, short and sweet overview of EV capable versus EV readiness, this kind of highlights, this small graphic kind of highlights what this different tiered approach to electric ready infrastructure is and why you have it. So EV capable is you're really installing panel capacity and conduit. However, you do not have, you are not providing the wiring. EV ready parking spaces is full circuit installation. EV installed is the equipment on the ground and ready to go immediately for use. Electric vehicle readiness. Within the Louisville Reach Code and the zoning amendments, we add electric vehicle infrastructure requirements for commercial and multifamily and single family residential in both the building and the zoning code. It differentiates between the 3 stages of infrastructure and used by building use to determine the most appropriate facilities. Within the code, we went through LSAB, Building Code Board of Appeals, and the Planning Commission, and ultimately it was recommended, and what staff has developed, we believe to be pretty rational. We have the EV readiness split for residential use, Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3, again, broken down into use. And this really focuses on dwell time and, the most appropriate scale for what the building use is for the infrastructure that we want to coincide there. Building electrification. In Louisville Reach Code currently, we are requiring all commercial, residential, and multifamily to be built to all electric standards or be built with high efficiency HVAC and electric ready infrastructure. This really makes retrofit less prohibitive down the road while still providing that choice at build. We do have the exceptions for industrial and manufacturing, laboratories and clean rooms, or by building official. One very important thing to note is that this is essentially a workaround to the federal preemption that currently exists. The federal preemption does not allow municipalities to require beyond the federal HVAC efficiency requirements unless it is provided as an option. And so if it's not provided as an option, we would lose pretty significant efficiency to our gas HVAC equipment. And so that is why it's framed as an alternative to have this high efficiency equipment if it's being installed as a secondary to all electric. As some additional background information, City Council did request this additional background, and it is detailed further within the packet. There's quite a lot. So please feel free at the end to ask plenty of questions. And then also requested that further policy discussion. Right now, no other community in Colorado has adopted all electric code ordinances. The City and County of Denver is currently evaluating their net zero energy by 2030 goal. And so we might see net zero strategies coming out of the City and County of Denver within the next couple of years, if not the next year. The only other municipalities that have all electric code are primarily found in California at this time. Ordinance, the state of Oregon is also evaluating all electric considerations at a state level. So with that, the phase 2 of the building code update could include further all electric standards. Phase 2 will ultimately allow staff to further analyze and further work through, and then also provide opportunity for community input and engagement. Zero energy appendices, City Council requested to be provided with the appendices for the zero energy residential and commercial provisions. It would result in a residential or commercial building that has zero energy consumption or zero net energy consumption. And it does allow on-site and off-site renewable energy to be able to accommodate to get you to that net zero provision. Again, similar to the building electrification, phase 2 of the building code update could include this review and this consideration. Phase 2 will ultimately, allow us to perform further analysis. And then again, that community input piece that is really critical as we step beyond just the IECC and some of these lesser provisions. Code adoption recommendation. After further staff review, a clarifying footnote is recommended to be included by motion. Under table R 402.1.2, we did add at request a footnote on heat slab on grade. And Chad Root is with us, our chief building official today, and can answer any questions around that recommendation. Staff recommends the adoption of Ordinance 1816/2021 with the amendment to Table R 402.1.2. And staff is here for any questions. Lisa Ritchie, Interim Director of Planning and Building Safety, is with us. Deputy City Manager Rob Zaccaro is with us, as well as Chad Root and Ho Medina. So there are plenty of, hopefully plenty of us to answer all your questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Baum. And so we'll ask council members if you have questions, and we'll try to keep it to questions. I know we're all going to be eager to give our comments as well, but we could get some questions answered ahead of going to public comment, and then we'll take public comment and get back to council questions and comments. So we're starting now with just some questions. Councilmember Lipton.
Thank you. Yeah, very nice presentation. I appreciate everything staff's been doing on this. And like we said before, this is certainly a team effort and a big team effort. Also, I want to thank the various boards that have taken a look at this, and their minutes were included in the packet. It seems like they all did a very good job and were very thorough with their reviews. I've got two quick questions, before perhaps more later. But my first question is, what types of building permit actions by both residential and commercial would trigger the need to comply with the upgraded standards?
Ms. Baum?
Chad, would you be able to kind of provide some clarification for Councilmember Lipton on how this is triggered?
Yeah, sure thing. I'm trying to turn on my video, but I can't. So I will just speak to it. So good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of council. So what we're looking at is there's a percentage in there as far as 50% of the square footage, that if we end up adding on to a home and going over that 50%, at that point, it's required to any new appliances would need to be brought up to that standard.
So Chad, if I could just probe a little bit. So it's really not necessarily a small change that would do the trigger. It's actually the addition of square footage that would trigger the new compliance. So I guess my question is, if somebody needed to install, say, some windows in their house, and you have to take out a building permit, or if you had to do something, fairly small, that's not going to trigger the requirement for a residential property then to, do all the compliance for the new standards, would it?
That's correct. So if somebody was to say upgrade their windows, that would just, the permit, the inspections would just be focused on the windows. If somebody was to change out a furnace, they would need to meet the new standards. As far as on the efficiency of the furnace, if it was a gas furnace, as far as running the electrical conduit, as it's spelled out in this code, we would not require that because it's already existing, but they would have to meet the higher efficiency for the gas appliance.
Okay, thank you. Can you speak a little bit about commercial building owners?
Yeah, so commercial would be basically set up in the same fashion. If they ended up coming in and say they were to add some overhead doors, office spaces, we would not require them to upgrade those appliances per se, or the lighting system, or anything else that's spelled out in the code. It's we basically just focus on what they are applying for, what the permit's for.
So for purposes of, say, just renewal and replacement, they would have to then comply with whatever the efficiency requirements were for whatever they were replacing, but it wouldn't trigger unless they were doing a significant expansion of the building, the requirement to have the entire building complying with the new code.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. My second question, I think, Katie, maybe you can speak to this, is, a lot of my neighbors have gas fireplaces. And, how does any of this affect gas fireplaces?
It will not. We have included fireplaces as an exception.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Those are my questions for now.
So, Chad, I have some follow-up questions for you, and maybe for Hope. I saw Hope turn on her camera there for a minute. So there are some pretty extensive exceptions in the existing building chapters for both residential and commercial. And I don't know that we all need to get a master's degree in the IECC tonight, but could you just talk about some of the, I mean, we had like some basic exceptions that were described to Councilmember Lipton, but like historic buildings are exempted. Like conditioning space has some exceptions. Like there's all kinds of different things that are that don't apply to existing buildings. So can you kind of describe, like for insulation and things like that, how that does or does not apply to existing buildings versus new buildings, and just how this focuses, how most of the code focuses on new buildings?
Okay. What I can do is, for an example, if somebody was to come in and on a commercial building or a single family home, and they say they have water damage, and they ended up removing the drywall and the insulation from that wall cavity, and they did some electrical work. At that point, whatever is opened up and they're working on would need to comply with the newest code. So for example, if there's electrical work they're doing in there, they would need to upgrade that to the newest state code. The 2020 NEC is what we're under now. When they put insulation back into the wall, they would need to comply with the newest and greatest as well, because that's what the permit was for, and that's what the permit's under. And that's currently what we're doing right now. We do have some single family homes that they ended up removing the walls, and they're 2x4 walls. And you can't get fiberglass bat insulation in a 2x4 wall that's an R21. So they end up coming back in with an alternative product such as spray foam to meet that higher R value.
Thank you for that. And so on that same line of questioning around the insulation, can you talk a little bit about the philosophy from the Building Code Board of Appeals? And I see a number of them are here today, and just I want to thank them for looking through this for us. But We heard from Katie in her presentation some savings that we would expect to see on this code. So she claimed a 9% savings on the residential side and a 4% efficiency saving on the commercial side. But I believe those percentages are based off of like a 2012 or a 2018 to 2021 code change. And our code, of course, is being proposed with modifications. So I'm not exactly sure what our percentages would be with those modifications. For example, we've taken out continuous insulation. And so could you just tell us a little bit about like the philosophy for taking out continuous insulation, and if continuous insulation would have had to be applied to all buildings or just new buildings?
Okay, so the continuous insulation, if we went with that route and somebody came in and did a remodel with continuous insulation and it was straight by the IECC, they would have to comply with the IECC unless they met the exemption under the existing building code. Okay, there are some exceptions on that. But realistically, what ended up taking place with the board is they were a little afraid to be the first on the line on requiring this code with the continuous insulation. And we had several contractors on that board, engineer, and their concerns were at this point, as far as if the insulation was to be put on the outside of the building, how would you adhere the siding to, because you have kind of a void, correct? Meaning that currently, right now with the OSB or the plywood on the outside of the house, you attach the siding directly to that with a house wrap. And with an exterior application of that continuous insulation, such as the foam board, they were a little worried about that application as far as how you would adhere the siding, mostly since we're in a high wind zone. That was pretty much their takeaway on it. So the full efficiency of the R values on the wall was dropped down a little bit without that continuous insulation. What I ended up doing is on some of the applications is I ended up requiring a higher R value in the walls versus since they pulled away the continuous insulation. For example, in some applications, they had a R13 in the stud bait, and then let me see. I'm looking at the book here, so.
So am I.
So like for an example, there was an R13 in the wall. This is a metal building. And then they did a R14 continuous insulation. We just called out a straight R21. So you do lose some of the R value from not having the continuous insulation, because that's really the best method. I don't know how many times you guys gone by and the temperature's just right and it's kind of a frosty morning and you can take a look at the side of a home and see right where the studs are, because the walls are frosted except where the stud is. And you can see where the studs come down. So that's what they're trying to do, is break that bridge, that thermal bridge.
So Chad, I can understand the issue with existing buildings and requiring continuous insulation, just because, you know, like if you had a brick home or something like that, to do that, it would be complicated or impossible. But for new buildings, hasn't continuous insulation been in the IECC since 2012?
And Hope, I'll let you answer that.
Okay, the continuous insulation has been an option as far as for climate zone 5. You've had the option of that you could utilize a cavity only, or you could use a cavity plus a continuous. So that has been available for at least the 09 and probably before that. The one thing I did want to clarify to make sure that there was an understanding is you had mentioned, or someone had mentioned about the 9% of the IEC on the residential side, having that was the percentage of improvement from the 2012, and it's not from the 2012. It's a 9% improvement from the 2018. And so one of the things I would also want to maybe present to keep in mind is, while the thermal envelope is very important, and you want to make sure there's so many components that are involved with it, it's not the only way to gain energy efficiency. So I know that appears to be a little bit of a concern about that continuous insulation, but until the 2021, the requirement of the continuous insulation, when you start talking about climate zone 5, really hasn't been an option that most builders will utilize. It's usually just been that cavity only option.
Thank you. And so is there a way to incorporate something like, what the Building Code Board of Appeals has suggested for existing buildings, like including that in Chapter 5 in the existing building section, and then leaving new buildings the way it was written to capture the efficiencies from continuous insulation?
So to kind of answer the question, Ashley, when the board brought it to my attention that they wanted to remove this out of the code as far as a continuous insulation, originally my thought was, well, the code says this, but then I thought about it, kind of where we're at. So we're looking at adopting the 2021 IECC, but we are looking at skipping the code cycle from the 2021 building codes, and in the probably 2 years to 2.5 years adopting the 2024 building codes. And the thought is at that time that we would look at the energy code again, the 2024 IECC, and the board kind of felt that, hey, by then we could take a look at the neighboring communities and see what they're doing as well. And if everyone's adopted that, and it's working well, then we would move forward with it. They just they were afraid of being the guinea pig per se on it. And it's only 2024 is not very far away. So I ended up going with it because I thought, well, there's a little bit of time. We're better than we were. And it's kind of like eating the elephant one bite at a time. You try to eat it all at once, and sometimes it doesn't sit well with you.
Thanks for that. Councilmember Dickinson.
Thank you. So, yeah, my understanding, Chad, is that one trying to figure out, even with new construction, one thing that happens, right, like with continuous insulation is, like in my basement right now, I have continuous insulation all around the inside. But if I decide to throw on drywall, I have to do a special way, right? Because if I just put the drywall and put it into the studs and sort of compress that insulation, I'm not getting the same benefit, right? So there's like a special way to install drywall so that you leave that insulation as continuous and you don't compress it, right? And it's the same thing with the outside, that if you do the continuous and then attach the drywall right up to the wood, you lose the continuousness. But if you don't do that, then you have trouble with the wind, that you have this gap that the siding isn't tightly fitting to the studs. And so builders end up finding a different solution, right? Like, well, we could do continuous, but because we have to deal with the wind, we're going to instead do this other thing. So if continuous works, like maybe one side of the building, great. And if it doesn't work in a different side of the building, then they look for a different option. But either way, they have to hit a certain R value, and we're just trying to give them different options. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah. So for the example, in the basement, what we see a lot of times is unfinished basements. They'll go ahead and put the continuous blanket bat insulation down.
Right.
And then, you know, Lewisville's pretty good. I would say probably 70% of the people actually get permits for basement remodels. The other 30 don't. And then what we usually find is even on the people that get permits, and this is contractors that are licensed, they'll end up pushing the framing up against that basement wall, ruining the R value of that blanket insulation because they compress it. And then we actually have to come in and tell them, hey, you need to add another R13 to the cavity because they ended up ruining the whole purpose of the continuous blanket insulation. For the outside, I think that's what the board was, the building advisory board was concerned about, is that 2-inch foam board on the outside of the building and the longer nails going through that foam board to get to the siding or the plywood OSB to attach it. And if it would fully be involved or connected at this time. And so they were, that's one of the reasoning behind it. And they were also afraid that, hey, this is kind of deja vu with the old Ethos products with the foam board up against the sheathing OSB and then the stucco on the outside, which caused a lot of deterioration on the homes. Products have improved, technology has gone better, but they really wanted to see what the other communities were doing before they jumped into it.
Okay, and then my question, just to follow up on some of this, but my question was, you guys have either added back in or strengthened or clarified the prescriptive path for builders. Can you explain a little bit what the reasoning is behind why do that? Why not have just a performative? Why do we have a prescriptive path?
Really, there's multiple reasons. Most contractors, and this isn't to diss contractors, but they're, 12th grade education, right? They just want to be told what they need to do, keep it as simple as possible. And the prescriptive path we found is very effective with a lot of the contractors, home remodelers, even the guys out there that are doing the fix and flips, because they kind of understand what they need to do without going into it in depth. They understand that, hey, if they don't have the R49 in the ceiling, that we're going ding them. If the hot water pipes are not insulated, we're going to, fell them. So they kind of understand the basics, that they understand that they have to put in higher efficient furnaces on that end. With this though, with the prescriptive path, there is also a performance, the HERS, and that was recommended by the board as well, that they wanted to see the HERS option. And so we ended up putting in the HERS option too, as far as performance path. And that's a really good direction to go to. And that's part of that, the zero, let's see here, the zero energy residential building provision appendix is based off of that too. And we ended up putting it in that they have to meet a 50, which is 50% better than code on the zero energy residential building provision. To meet that under the HERS for our zone, it's 47. And keep in mind, less is better than more, because that means that it's a tighter unit, tighter home. It's more energy efficient.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So let's turn to members of the public now and find out what they'd like to tell us. And just if everyone could remember to please tell us your name and then your address, and then tell us what you'd like to tell us. And there are several people in the queue, so just keep your hand raised until I get to you. So first up is Mary Van Zale.
Hi, Hi, my name is Hazel Van Zale, and I live at 633 McKinley Avenue in Louisville. I'm 10 years old, and I'm in the 5th grade at Lewisville Elementary School. Thank you for serving as leaders in our community by helping make important decisions and turning our town into a better place. I would like to tell you why Lewisville should adopt the 2021 International Energy Conservation Code, IECC, and the Zero Energy Home Appendix. Denver is working towards adopting the IECC building code, so we should follow their example to help the planet. The US alone produces 40% of the global greenhouse gas emissions, and this building code can help reduce that. This is important to me because I want a planet where we can go outside and breathe clean air. This is the only planet that we can live on, so we have to do our part to keep it healthy so it can sustain life for us and for future generations. So as a citizen of Lewisville, I'm asking you as our leaders to take this opportunity to do the right thing and ensure that our new construction has the lowest possible greenhouse gas emissions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Andrew Gano.
Hi, my name is Weston Gano. I live in Steel Ranch, Lewisville, Colorado. I am 10 years old. I'm in 4th grade at Lewisville Elementary School. Thank you for serving as leaders in our community as city council members. I would like to tell you why Lewisville should adopt the IECC, the 2021 IECC, and the Zero Energy Home Appendix. Residential and commercial buildings are responsible for about 40% of our energy footprint. We need laws that make sure these buildings are constructed in a manner that is safe for our environment. For example, the 2021 IECC is particularly important because it helps us manage our energy footprint and is 10% more efficiency than the prior code. The Zero Energy Home Appendix is also important. Adopting the appendix would require all new commercial and residential buildings to produce or product enough reusable energy to achieve the zero net carbon annually. This is important to me because I want my children to live in a good environment. We want to keep the air clean, humans healthy, and plants alive. So as a citizen of Lewisville, I'm asking you as our leaders to take this opportunity, do the right thing, and ensure that our new construction has the lowest possible greenhouse gas emissions. My future and the future of your children is in your hands. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. And it looks like our city clerk knows that the screen sharing isn't working correctly to get the timer up, and it looks like she's working on that. So just thank you everybody for working to stick to the 3 minutes, and you're doing great at that so far. Next up, we have Baxter Case. And we're working on unmuting you. There we go.
Hi, my name is Baxter Case. I live at 564 Lincoln Avenue, and I am 9 years old. I am in the 4th grade at Lewisville Elementary School. Thank you for serving as leaders in our community as we work together to create a healthier environment for kids like me. I would like to tell you why Lewisville should adopt the 2021 International Energy Code, IECC, in the Zero Energy Homes Appendix. Here are some facts. Did you know that the Colorado electricity and transportation sectors are the top 2 sources of climate warming pollution? The 2021 International Energy Conservation Code also includes an optional Zero Energy Appendix, which is recommended. This is important to me because it makes leaders know that in the future, if I have children, we have clean air to breathe. So as citizens of Louisville, I am asking you as our leaders to take this opportunity to do the right thing and ensure that our new construction has the lowest possible greenhouse gas emissions. My future depends on the world making this decision, so we might as well start here. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Andrew Gano.
Weston Gano already went.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. We were having some trouble with the timer, so usually the clerk helps me with the hands and putting them up and down, and I'm sure that's where we got stuck. Sorry about that. Next, we have Peter Geiss. Hi, Peter.
Good evening, council members. I am not in the 4th grade, but I do live at 808 Spyglass Circle in Lewisville. And I just want to kind of chime in and add some stuff with what Chad had said. One, we're not afraid, we're hesitant on moving forward with some of these, adoptions. One of them that's going to trigger is the change of use in commercial. So not only adding 25% of the building envelope, but also adding a change of use will trigger all of these codes coming into play, which would, incur cost to the building owner. For the continuous insulation, we were worried, I guess, on the connection points to decks and outdoor structures to the home, where you have your 2-inch foam insulation and not being able to get a fastener in there with a shear point. That comes down to structural integrity of your home. Yes, the siding has the wind speed, but also if you start wrapping all these houses with 2 inches worth of foam to hit your R value, you're going to lose structural integrity on your decks and your pergolas or your porches that are attached to your house, or a sunshade that's attached to your house. It doesn't have the sheer strength to it. When Chad was talking about a remodel or a water damage into a home, you're going to have to go from a 2x4 wall to a 2x6 wall. And then, like you said, start including spray foam insulation, which has benefits, but it also has, off gassing. It's very costly to come in there and spray in just one section of a wall. So I think it comes down to the installation guidelines on some of these pieces. I just think some of the recommendations were taken out of context of where we were looking at with our board. So I thank you all.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Tess Wilson.
Hi, my name is Tess Waltzine. I live at 2869 Shoshone Trail. Thank you for serving our community in a leadership role, especially during these difficult times. I'm here to talk about adopting the 2021 International Energy Conservation Code and the Zero Energy Homes Appendix. They are important steps that Louisville needs to take in order to reduce our city's greenhouse gas emissions. Residential and commercial buildings are a huge contributor to the use of fossil fuels that we are trying so hard to get away from. About 40% of the US energy consumption and greenhouse gas emissions come from these buildings. The buildings we construct in Louisville today will be around for decades, even generations to come. Every day, a municipality or a state waits on adopting the new code means less efficient buildings continue to be built, which means locking in more greenhouse gas emissions. As we work for regional cooperation on the coordination of building codes, it is important for Louisville to follow Denver's lead and to adopt the Zero Energy Homes Appendix. This will continue our climate action across the Denver metropolitan area and show citizens that our town is serious about reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. It is so important now as ever for Louisville to take a lead in our climate solutions. City-level action, especially for greenhouse gas reductions, can be so impactful, and the most aggressive strategies are implemented at a local level. Once adopted, all new residential construction will have on and off-site renewable energy. no new natural gas, and an electrification mandate. As a youth in Louisville who wants a healthy future, we need our leaders to be taking this action for our safety, health, and a better future. Your bold action will ensure the reduction of greenhouse gases for generations to come. I'm calling on you to take this step for Louisville to join other cities who are taking the climate crisis seriously. Thank you.
Thank you. Next in the queue, we have Sadie Gabriel.
Hi, thanks so much for having me here. My name is Sadie Gabriel, and I live in 217 Short Place here in Lewisville, Colorado. I am a sixth grader at Lewisville Middle School, and I am here to tell you why Lewisville should adopt the building codes. The first reason is because people would benefit from this. It would improve indoor air quality and reduce greenhouse gases. Fortunately, our state also supported the adoption of the 2021 IECC. This gives us yet another chance to turn our ways around. It includes an optional zero energy homes appendix, and I recommend this for Lewisville because if we're serious about turning things around, we should get it. If we do this, it would inspire other places too. Doing something small will end up changing the world. I want this because I want a new future where the air is clean, the leaves are green, and my generation will be living a cleaner life. Sooner or later, we will run out of fossil fuels. So this is a good way to turn that around. Instead of polluting our earth with fossil fuels, we will have a cleaner air, ponds, and wildlife. My generation cannot go on living in a muddy gray world. I see a light. I see a chance. Let's make our town and everywhere around it healthy and better. I know we can do this. So let's start small and go big. Vote yes on the building codes. Vote yes for a cleaner and awesomer future.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Michael Hyatt.
Hello, my name is Evan Hyatt. I live at 655 Dahlia Way. I am a fourth grader at Lewisville Elementary School. Thank you for serving as leaders in our community as we work together to create a healthier town for kids like me. I would like Lewisville to adopt the 2021 International Energy Conservation Code and the Zero Energy Homes Appendix. There are two reasons why you should adopt the code and the appendix. First, the building sector is a major source of climate pollution. Energy efficiency and distributed energy resources are important for reducing those emissions. Second, energy efficiency is the cheapest energy resource. Adopting the code and appendix will save everyone money. Thank you, and please adopt the code and the appendix.
Thank you very much. Next, we have RJ Harrington.
Check 1, 2.
We can hear you.
Good. Thanks, Ashley. New headphones. Little verklempt. Give me a second. Wow. If our youth can speak that powerfully for our future, one must ask oneself. We heard another adult make comment earlier about how much these improvements might cost. Who will those costs be incurred by? Current generations, rather than costs that may also be incurred by the future generations that spoke earlier. My children, our children, I'm RJ Harrington at 457 East Raintree Court. Yes, I'm verklempt. Our children at Monarch High School authorized me to speak on their behalf as well. We encourage you to adopt Ordinance 1816, Series 2021 as amended. And if any amendments come to the Zoom over the course of your discussion this evening, they should serve to strengthen this ordinance, not weaken it. The Harrington family has lived now in an all-electric home for 2 full years. We disconnected our gas meter 2 years ago. If other neighbors want the choice to poison themselves with on-site gas appliances, I suppose they have that choice. The problem ultimately comes down to what our species is deciding to do to continue to demand additional fossil infrastructure. There are a variety of different pieces to the puzzle that staff has unearthed, and all kudos to the team on staff for this excellent presentation and excellent research that has led to some very significant conclusions. But the problem with the continued pull on demand is multifaceted. Pollution continues unabated, most especially with our local air quality. The frac fields to our north and east continue to vent methane uncontrolled. Other volatile organic compounds are poisonous to our and other species. The local impact that the children have discussed here over the last several minutes is important. There is nothing more great than our city can do than to take this step, go big now, and go even bigger in phase 2. And I look forward to those future conversations. Thank you.
Thank you. And next in the queue, we have Grady Gabriel.
Hi, my name is Grady Gabriel. I am an 11-year-old, and I live at 217 Short Place, Louisville, Colorado, and I'm a student at Lewisville Middle School. Thank you for taking public comment on this important topic. I think that we should adopt the IECC building codes and the Zero Home Energy Appendix. I think this is important because our new construction in Louisville needs to be run by renewable energy and not by fossil fuels. The state of Colorado has also supported the adoption of the 2021 IECC, which achieves an estimated 10% greater efficiency than codes from previous years. The 2021 IECC will be the first code in several cycles that has achieved this level of energy savings. The IECC code also includes an optional Zero Energy Homes Appendix, which is very important for the city of Louisville to adopt. Louisville should join the city of Denver that has already adopted zero energy base codes. And adopting these will mean that Louisville will have a brighter future that is less dependent on fossil fuels. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Jeff Valerie.
Hello, my name is Amelie Valier. I live at 2428 North Franklin Avenue in Louisville. I'm a proud 6th generation Coloradoan. I'm 11 years old and I'm in 6th grade at Lewisville Middle School. Thank you for serving as leaders in our community as city council members. I would like to tell you why Louisville should adopt the 2021 International Energy Conservation Code and the Zero Energy Home Appendix. Over 70% of greenhouse gas emissions globally are created by cities. Colorado has supported the adoption of the 2021 IECC, which will create 10% greater efficiency than the earlier code and will greatly reduce carbon dioxide emissions each year. Additionally, Denver has taken a lead in our area and has adopted the Zero Energy Home Appendix. This means that new buildings and homes will be highly energy efficient, all electric, and powered by renewable energy. The city of Louisville should adopt the appendix so that we can make an impact of reducing greenhouse gases across the Front Range. This is important to me because I want this world to be a better place, but it starts small to make a big change. It starts with us. We need to make a local change to make a big change and to help fight climate change. We need to work together to create a healthier town for kids like me and for the future kids and the future worlds. So as a citizen of Louisville, I'm asking you as our leaders to take this opportunity and to do the right thing and ensure that our new construction has the lowest possible greenhouse gas emissions. My generation is the future, and we need to make an impact to save this world from a global crisis. We can't just talk about making changes. That won't get us very far. But as the town of Louisville, we need to take a step in the right direction and to change our building codes to make our town and planet a healthier place. So as a Louisville citizen, I'm asking you to please adopt the 2021 IECC building codes and the Zero Energy Home Appendix. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Isabel Valier.
Hi, my name is Isabel Valier. I live at 2428 North Franklin Avenue. I was born in Louisville, Colorado, and I'm sixth generation from Colorado. I am 11 years old and a sixth grader at Lewisville Middle School. Thank you for serving as leaders in our community, and I appreciate and admire all the things you do for our community. I am here today to talk to you about the 2021 IECC building codes. This code integrates more energy efficiency with the use of clean energy as an alternative to burning fossil fuels. This would reduce greenhouse gas pollution and improve indoor air quality. Greenhouse gas emissions produced by buildings play a big role in global climate change, while Colorado's electricity and transportation are the top two sources of climate change. Fuel and use in residential and commercial and industrial buildings do not fall far behind. The 2021 IECC code includes an optional zero energy homes appendix, which we want the city to adopt to. I believe that cities that are serious about reducing greenhouse gas emissions should adopt the 2021 IECC and the zero energy codes. The city of Denver has already adopted the zero energy based codes, and I believe we can too. This is important to me because my generation is the future. We want to show our community how Louisville can be a leading example in the fight against global warming. Adopting the 2021 IECC and the zero energy codes is a start to a better future, and it starts with you. So as a citizen of Louisville, I am asking you to take this opportunity and make sure new buildings have the lowest greenhouse gas emissions possible. Use this opportunity and help reduce greenhouse gas emissions to make this community a better place. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Next, we have the Tober family.
Hello, my name is Arthur Tauber. I'm a sixth grader at Lewisville Middle School, and I live on 1310 Jackson Court. I'm grateful that you guys have made this city what it is, and I like living here. I'm here to talk about the fact that global warming is real and needs to be stopped. One way to do that is to adopt the IECC for stricter laws for people's homes. Building codes are a vital part of the effort to stop global warming. This is because 40% of all greenhouse gas emissions come from the USA. You might be thinking, so what do I benefit? Or as consumers, how do they benefit? Well, both of you benefit. Not only does everybody get to enjoy a clean, healthy planet, but you benefit money-wise as well. For consumers, instead of having to spend extra money on the energy bill for wasted energy, you now have to pay less because of zero leakage of energy. As a city, though, instead of having to spend money all year round for fossil fuels, you can just build this and get it over with. As a bonus, if you save taxpayers money, they'll be happy with the city. But now we're on the catch-up. Well, sorry. The city of Denver has already adopted this strategy, and it's pretty good, but I know that we can do better. Remember, if we do this, this makes up a great amount of the greenhouse gases released in Louisville. And today is my birthday, my first day being 12. And the best birthday gift I could ever imagine is having a law passed for greener homes. Just think, a green home and a healthy planet. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Caleb Forrester.
It looks like I need to promote him to panelist. So if you hold on just a moment.
All right, and just to let other folks know what's going on, sometimes with the different versions of Zoom that people have installed, the only way to get the audio and microphone to work is to promote people up to panelist. And so now it should be working, and you should be able to unmute yourself and tell us what you'd like to tell.
Okay, thank you. My name is Caleb Forrester, and I'm 11, and I live at 1397 Caledonia Circle. in Lewisville, Colorado. I'm a 6th grader at Lewisville Middle School. I want to make a change. We need to make this world a better place, starting by passing this bill. Our future depends on it. As you probably know, the Colorado Energy Office and the Division of Housing within the Colorado Department of Local Affairs said the updated criteria encourages developers to design housing that makes higher efficiency standards, which is going to make houses better. For example, some criteria like the U.S. Department of Energy's Zero Energy Ready Homes helps houses be more energy efficient. The update also includes electric vehicle ready parking spaces, energy use intensity reporting, and criteria to assess the future retrofit needs of the building, ongoing utility costs, and housing density. In all, my point is we have to go forward. With your vote, we can go forward together. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Andy Johnson.
There we go. Good evening. My name's Andy Johnson. I live at 920 Lincoln Avenue. I also work at 922 Main Street and the principal architect at DAJ Design. Do not expect to be up so soon. I've been enjoying listening to our young citizens, and I'm immensely proud that these kids are going to get to go on not knowing about what environmental ethic is because it's just part of their DNA. All of us older folks, we get to learn it. They're an inspiration, and I'm looking forward to being a better architect because of what I listened to tonight. I have practiced in Boulder County for a long time. I have been a part of many green building programs, energy conservation programs as an architect, doing homes and buildings throughout both Boulder County, Colorado, and around the nation, and have kicked the tires on a lot of these programs that have kind of left me wondering whether or not I made any difference. I think a code adoption is a really effective way to put everybody on the same playing field and to have a lot of backing in terms of what kind of change actually is trying to be accomplished. And I think the 2021 IECC, it finally is coming around. We have been building to these standards since 2006 in terms of our homes. And I think that these are building envelopes that we can really get a lot out of in terms of our buildings. I do think that the commercial standards are going to be a big bump up. However, one of my favorite conversations that I enjoy having with my mechanical engineers is when we start playing with insulation values, window values, and watching mechanical equipment substantially get reduced in terms of their demand on energy and also the cost overall of construction. So I think that is going to be a benefit that we will see. However, it will probably have a little bit of pushback at the beginning. In terms of homes, exterior insulation is a standard in all of our homes. We've done it many different ways. It is entirely possible, and there are lots of ways to achieve it. Lots of new technology is coming out to allow that to happen. On-site power generation is a relatively easy thing. It is basically another appliance that gets added to the home. We have a great resource with Hope Medina, who has provided a number of training sessions, and our professionals should feel very well supported by both staff and the consultants that we brought into the city. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Tiffany Boyd.
Hi, good evening. Tiffany Boyd. I live at 550 Grant Avenue, and I'm happy to follow Andy Johnson, who was a proud member of the Louisville Sustainability Advisory Board. Prior to myself, I think he served during 2009 and those years around then. So there is this metaphorical kicking the can down the road with building codes. And unfortunately, a climate crisis does not get kicked down the road. So we are living in the middle of a time where, as many of the people who spoke tonight are talking about, unless we use that balance of sticks and carrots, and we know that the sticks of a building code can really hold the line and also make sure that there's consistency across the board. This patchwork of different zero energy residential codes is not beneficial for builders. And if we can have this consistent language that the Net Zero Homes Appendix brings to Louisville, let's do it sooner than later. Let's move phase 2 up. So when Chad Root talks about waiting for 2 years to see what the 2024 codes are and looking around regionally to see what advancements there've been, let's be the ones that people are looking at. As a member of Louisville Sustainability Advisory Board, the council asked us for our recommendations. Thank you for including our recommendations in your packet. We are strongly encouraging not only adoption of the code, but the Zero Energy Homes Appendix, some waste diversion from construction sites, really looking to make sure that not just the residential, but the commercial roofing requirements are being met, and also extending those a little bit to some green roofing, and also this adoption of the building electrification mandate. So yes, this is aggressive, but we're in the middle of a climate crisis, and if not now, when? And we really appreciate council taking this seriously. There has been so much evidence around the greenhouse gas emissions from commercial and residential buildings. Will it cost more money? Yes. Will it be inconvenient? Yes. Is the climate crisis inconvenient? Yes. So let's rise to the occasion and do what we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Tamar Krantz.
Hi, my name is Tamar Krantz and I live at 691 West Street. And I'm also calling to encourage you to make the stretch and to adopt the Zero Energy Homes Appendix. I really love the point that one of the speakers has already made, that if we don't do this now, we'd be locking in inefficiency in every new building that we make for years to come. I don't really have any statistics, but just from my observations living in Louisville for many years, it seems like homes are being built to be bigger and bigger. And if we can allow homes to be bigger and bigger, it seems like we really need to make sure that they are more efficient to compensate for that at least. I appreciated what the architect said. This is possible. And I don't really have much more to add because you had so many comments saying things that I was thinking of saying. So we are in a climate crisis, and given that, I mean, I think it's a moral imperative that we listen to future generations and do everything that we can, including adopting the Zero Energy Homes Appendix. Thank you.
Thank you. And I don't see any other hands at the moment, but members of the public will get one other chance for comment. There's one more now, and if other folks want to raise their hand, that's great too. And just remind everybody, you'll also have another moment in a bit. Mike Kranzdorf.
Sorry about that. Thanks for taking my comments. I absolutely agree with the adoption as proposed. Of course, we need more efficiency as a community. I don't agree with all of the proposals, potentially the charging proposals. I don't understand why you need chargers in front of liquor stores, dispensaries, but let me put that off for now. Regarding the appendix, there's 1,000 pages in your current packet. There's a lot to say about what Denver has done. I absolutely agree with Denver's net zero energy proposals, but it goes well beyond just adopting the efficiencies. what comes along with it are cash rewards, density bonuses, reviews, fee reductions. I just want to say, if you're going to adopt the appendix, please move that into your phase 2 section. Do some analysis, do community outreach, understand the 1,000 pages of what Denver has done. For example, keep in mind, if you go to full electrification, you're increasing costs for your low-income residents. There are a lot of complications here. But I absolutely agree with the ordinance as proposed by staff. I'd encourage you not to go beyond that tonight. Leave that for further discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. And so, like I said, there'll be another opportunity for public comment, but with that, we'll take it back over to council discussion, questions and comments. And I just want to say thank you to all the members of the community who have participated all the way through this process, whether they've written in ahead of tonight or participated at the Sustainability Board or the Building Code Board of Appeals or Planning Commission or other community events. The input we've gotten is tremendous, and I thank you very much. And of course, the speakers tonight were very meaningful and moving. So thank you very much for all your comments. And it looks like there's some council discussion to be had on this topic, and we'll start with Councilmember Fahey.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I will add my thanks to staff and to all the public who wrote in and called in and have helped with this entire process. One point that I wanted to make was a lot of comments about the cost of changing and making more sustainable building practices. I just want to point out that there are also long-term cost savings once you've done those changes. So, and one example that I can give is that we built our house 30 years ago, and we did put in 2x6 walls instead of 2x4 with the additional insulation that went along with that. Did cost us a little bit more when we built it 30 years ago, but now we've had savings in heating and air conditioning bills for 30 years as a result of that choice. Also, we have an electric car and an electric charging station in our garage, and my husband, being the scientist that he is, installed a meter to determine how much electricity we were putting into the car. And this has been going on for years now, to determine how much it costs us per mile to drive my electric vehicle. And it's approximately half the per mile cost of putting gasoline in my former vehicle. So there are a lot of cost savings that come along after you've made this transition to more energy efficient building and vehicle changes. So I just want to promote this. I'm fully in support of adopting the new building code, and I hope the rest of council is as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Fahey. Mayor Pro Tem Maloney.
Thank you, Mayor. And I just want to note that you stole my question previously. So anyway, you know, I first want to thank all of the staff who worked on this. And I know there's several of them that are here tonight, as well as, you know, the consultant. This is what I would call a very comprehensive and very powerful body of work. It's something that, you know, we put this on our work plan back in January very seriously. And I think this is something that I know my colleagues as well as I am very interested in. So just a personal story, like Councilor Deb, we put in solar panels some time ago. We put in a heat pump at the same time. It's interesting, our electric bill is about $6 a month. And we're running basically everything, you know, off of the solar panels, and that $6 a month is really what represents what it costs at night. So, like, that's interesting. But I think this is an ordinance that is ready. I think it is something that we should support. I do have some questions around it, you know, some of the things in the direction that Councilor Lipton talked about as well. And so I'd like to add Chad Reeder question. We had a member of the Board of Appeals, the Board of Appeals, talking about remodels. And that did raise a question in my mind about at what extent do we say we need to bring some of these things up to code? Is that something we need to decide to not tonight, or is that something that should be considered in phase 2? And before you answer that question, Chad, I just want to make one more comment. I like the way this is structured, that we have an ordinance tonight, and then we have a number of things that will be considered over a period of time as phase 2, because I'm not sure some of those things are as ready for us to make a statement on or a requirement on. So I would like to see more study and more public comment on the phase 2 items. So I absolutely support the staff's recommendation on that. But Chad, if you could just talk about the comment that was made, because I want to make sure that we do something that makes sense. And if someone, you had an example, but if somebody is doing a 10-foot section of a wall, and we're saying now they're going to have to be doing continuous insulation or something, I'm just trying to wrap my head around that. And you're the expert, if you could just help me understand that a little bit.
Yeah, sure thing, Dennis. So if someone is doing a small 10-foot section of wall, or they are basically a 4x8 sheet of drywall they removed the insulation, we're going to try to meet the intent of the code. The code will call for an R21 in there, but if it's just a small section, we're going to try to make it better than it was in many aspects. Looking at, hey, if we can't get R21 in there and it's a small section, what alternative means and methods do we have? Is it, hey, they go and they buy some foam board and they put in there to get a better R value? Or is it just really no possible way? And, a lot of times what we're finding is that in a 2x4 wall, they might have the old R11 in there. And so we'll have them put a 15 in there instead. So we try to meet the code the best that we can to make it better than it was. A lot of these where we push to have them meet the code are projects where they're kind of fix and flips, where, hey, somebody's making money off this house by reselling it to a future resident of Louisville. And at that point, we make sure that, hey, they do meet the code on that, because we just don't want to see somebody making money and not having the efficiencies in the home that somebody's thinking there is in it, and they buy it and it's not there. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, what you're saying, there's some reasonableness factor in that decision and requirement factor. So, all right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, sure thing.
Councilmember Dickinson.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll just say I'm in total support of us adopting the 2021 IECC code for Louisville tonight. And I just want a clarification. Chad, I think you might be the right person, but anyone can answer this. Just clarification, is there any other city in the state of Colorado that has adopted the 2021 IECC yet?
I am actually going to defer to Hope because she knows it all.
There are quite a few jurisdictions in the process right now, especially in your area, that are working on adopting the 2021. Quite honestly, I think if it goes through tonight, you guys would be the first. Don't quote me on it, but you would at least be the leaders as far as when this is adopted. The one thing I wanted to kind of, if you don't mind me mentioning, is when you start talking about existing buildings, there's chapter 5. And what it states in there is, if you're not touching it, you don't have to bring it up to code. And if you open up the walls and there is insulation in it, you just have to fill that cavity. So there wouldn't be a requirement to take that 2x4 wall and make it into a 2x6 wall to get that R21.
And to also
Okay.
provide some, to
go
provide
ahead, Katie.
some additional context around, the additional communities. In the packet, we kind of highlight some of the work being done earlier in the year around the Energy Assistance Impact Fund grant. We were also recently told that that group has actually moved forward and has been awarded that grant. So that includes Boulder County, that includes City of Boulder, that includes Town of Erie, City of Lafayette, Town of Superior. And within that grant is 2021 IECC adoption. And so that's been given about a 6 to 9 month timeline for that adoption for those communities. So I did also want to provide that context around other communities looking at this.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I'm glad that that it sounds like a lot of communities in our area are going to be moving in this direction, and whether tonight is the first or not is a little bit irrelevant. Other than it's exciting. It's exciting to be moving in the right direction, and all the kids that we're on and talking about what matters, and clearly, there will be some financial implications of what we do tonight and in the future, but certainly I think this is a fantastic step, and I'm really excited to keep this conversation alive and going. I don't think this is a matter of kicking the can down the road. I think it's doing something tonight that brings our code up to 2021, and then continuing on this path to solidify some of the things that we all seem to agree on. I haven't heard a lot of pushback from anybody tonight, so I'm excited about all that.
Thanks, Councilmember Dickinson. And just want to add in that in my working in regionally with other communities, all the communities around us are doing this, and some have already adopted the electrical vehicle portions. So like the phasing of how they're adopting it has been different, but everybody by the end of the year will have very, very close to the same thing. I think with our modifications, ours will be a little bit weaker. So just adding that in for context. So I just want to thank everybody again and add my comments too while I'm talking. It sounds like there's a lot of consensus around ensuring that we adopt the building code tonight. And I know we're all very committed to environmental action and taking climate action seriously. And that's why council put this on the work plan unanimously. So I think there's no doubt that we're all very committed to it. I do think there's an opportunity to do a bit more than is included. I'd like to propose that in the list of appendices adopted, which is on page 242 of the packet, just adding a sentence at the end of it, 0 energy, residential and commercial appendices. People have talked about the scope and extent of this topic. Every time we've taken up building code since I've been on in 2013, it always takes me a lot of time, whether it's fire code or building code or plumbing code, any of them, because there's just so many different things to read, and you can read different articles. And so there's 1,000 pages in the packet, but there's also the building code itself and all of the other pages. So I just want to let everybody know I've taken it very seriously. But looking at those two codes is very easy. They're only each about 1 page long. And they list a number of ways that a building can become a net zero, which was what Councilmember Lipton was proposing in our Red Tail Ridge discussion, but it's not in the abstract. It specifically lists out how a building can get credit for being net zero. So you can generate enough energy for your whole building on site, or you can buy RECs, or you can buy into a solar farm, or so there's just a lot of options listed out on how you can do it. But the purpose of it is to get enough energy created, carbon-free energy created to cover the total carbon load of the building. What it doesn't do is require all building electrification. So I just like us to separate the different topics into separate discussion topics for tonight. But I would be very supportive of adding in that 0 energy residential and commercial appendix tonight. And if people are talking about this phase 1 and phase 2, I just want to remind everyone that phase 2 is supposed to be complete in 4th quarter of 2021. And so I think it's 4th quarter of 2021. So we're right on track with phase 2. And I understand, people are going to have different feelings about the pace and the cadence. But from my perspective, time is of the essence, and we have to take climate action. And we're behind in taking climate action. So while some people may feel like I'm pushing and that this is too far, I feel deeply, and I heard from the members of the community that commented, and every survey we've done has asked that we need to do more and be bold and lead, not wait and sit back and decide if we're going to adopt codes that have been around since 2009. So at minimum, I would hope that we'll include the zero energy residential and commercial appendices language that I've proposed, adding that in the appendices adopted section, which is on page 242 of the packet and in the ordinance, and I'm happy to put on the screen where that would go. But what I would also like us to consider tonight is striking out the alternative for fuel gas options and just putting periods after the terms all electric in both the commercial and residential building section. So we previously this year had some extensive discussions around electrification and requiring all electric, and this is the time to do it. If we wait a year, all the buildings that get built in a year will be like that for 50 years to 100 years. If we wait 2 years, all the buildings that get built in those 2 years will be like that for 50 years to 100 years. So if we want all electric renewable buildings, the time to act is now. And so I would hope that we can at least have a good discussion tonight around deleting the fuel gas options and just leaving it at commercial buildings shall be all electric and residential buildings shall be all electric. And in my proposal, I just want to make it clear that I'm talking about in new buildings and not having it applicable to the Chapter 5 sections on existing buildings. So those are my comments, and I hope council will consider them, and I'm happy to put on the screen where I would make those amendments in the ordinance if necessary. Councilmember Lay, I think you had your, sorry about that. Mayor Pro Tem Maloney.
So I just had a point of clarification on your comments, if I may.
Yes, sir.
So in looking at our packet, are you proposing that the Appendix CC on page 266 is included for commercial?
Let me just make sure I'm on the state. Yeah, so Appendix CC is that zero energy commercial building provisions that's on page 266, yes. And the same.
And then 269 for the residential.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
And it's so to enable that, it's just one sentence I would add in the ordinance under the appendices adopted section. Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it. And I really appreciate the discussion tonight. I was particularly excited to hear all of the students, who have called in and logged in to talk about the urgent need for climate action. You know, I'm very much in favor of not just the building code, but the addition of the appendices in your proposed amendment, as well as striking the fuel gas options. As you know, on previous discussions before this council, I have pushed strongly for the elimination of fuel gas options and for complete electrification, not just of residential, but of commercial as well. And this addition and these changes to the staff proposal is consistent with that position. So I'll be very much in favor of those particular amendments. So thank you very much. You're muted, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Brown. Any other discussion from council members? Councilmember Lipton.
Yeah, thank you. I'm trying to understand what the practical effect would be by adding those two appendices tonight. And I'm trying to also, I guess I would ask the question, these were issues that I believe staff proposed would be in the next phase after we had some more significant community engagement, if I'm correct. Katie, could you kind of comment on that?
Yeah, so staff did recommend leaving the zero energy residential and commercial provisions to phase 2, so that exactly what you mentioned, so that we can do some more robust community engagement and get some more community input on moving that direction.
Katie, how long would it take to do that community engagement? Are we talking several months, several years? How long were you thinking that might take?
I will actually hand that that question over either to Rob Zuccaro or Lisa Ritchie on that expected timeline.
So I don't know quite how long it would take, Councilmember Lipton. I think, you know, I think just adopting the appendices, we would really want to understand, you know, what that would mean from an impact on, you know, the development community, on residents, on affordability. We'd want to research all of these things. You know, Denver, who is moving towards a zero energy type code, they're wanting to transition over time, and they have a lot of information about how to do that. And there's probably some good reasons why they want to do it stepwise. You know, whether a council wants to do it sooner than later, I mean, that's certainly at the prerogative of council. I think staff's position is we want to make sure that you have all of the information you need to make a good decision, and that the community has a chance to weigh in on the potential of a zero energy code for residential and commercial. To try to answer your question, I think we'd probably want to hire consultants again to inform that discussion and that code development. I'd say if council wanted this to be an incredibly high priority, you know, we could certainly try to do it in 3 to 6 months. I think there's other projects that we would have to set aside or would be delayed, which is fine. It all depends on what council wants as a priority. But to try to get to your direct question, if council wants it done sooner than later, I think we could try to do it in 3 to 6 months. I'd be happy to try to answer any other questions you have.
Rob, thank you very much. I mean, I think council can establish the priorities and you know, perhaps a work plan in this regard could be established and, you know, approved by both staff and council. You know, I was going to enthusiastically support approving the ordinance as presented tonight, as recommended by staff. You know, to be honest, these appendices may be the direction the city, you know, will choose to go in the future, but I think there's a significant amount of research and engagement that should occur first, both from the residential community as well as the commercial community. And I think being deliberate and having those conversations and looking at these issues very holistically, including developing perhaps, you know, carrots and sticks, not just the sticks, I think is something that will get us to where we eventually want to be, but also not have, or not do it in a way where we don't understand what the consequences will be. And I think if it takes another 6 months to do a good job with the engagement, bringing this back to council and have council, you know, look at it again, you know, from both carrot, stick, risk, reward. I think that would be, you know, a better way of going than trying to approve all of this tonight. So again, I'm supportive of approving the ordinance as presented, but I don't think I could be supportive of going this additional step. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilmember Lipton. And I just want to, I have a different perception on the characterization than Director Zuccaro presented. And so I just want to provide my perspective on what we've set forward. So council has a work plan that's been adopted that suggests that we would take up this all electric issue in the 4th quarter of this year, which we're in. So my perception of how we've prioritized things and what we've committed to is different than what's been presented. So I just want to clarify that. And we have gotten significant input from the community that this is important, both in land use applications and in this building code process. Like, we brought this through our boards and commissions, And we were told by our sustainability boards explicitly that they have interest in adopting not only the things I've proposed, but additional things that I would suggest that we need to study more and find out how to do. They've proposed waste diversion from construction sites. There's nothing in our packet about how to accomplish that and how to get rid of shingles and things like that. They've proposed that we look into green roofing like Denver already has in place and other things. So I do think there's more work to be done. I think there's no doubt about that. But both our community members and Denver's community members have been very clear that they want action, climate action immediately, that this is not something that they want us to wait on. So the two minor proposals that I've made, I believe are a start, and then we have a lot more work to do. So the way that it's been presented and laid out, I don't agree with. In Denver's community proposal, their community engagement and their subcommittee recommended doing the electrification in 2021. And for political reasons, it's gotten a delay and is extended and protracted, but that's not because that's what the community wanted. And so I think saying that theirs is delayed is not a reason for ours to be delayed. And we can be more agile and listen to our community members and do this now. Councilmember Lay.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it. This has been really interesting. This is an incredibly important and interesting topic or series of topics. And I wanted to say, along with others, how appreciative I am of all of those. Katie, I know you're sort of out front on this one, but I know that you have like a huge team that has weighed in on this, and it's a great packet. It's and you've provided options for us, and I really appreciate that. And I too am, like Councilmember Brown, so appreciative of hearing younger people speak on this, because it really it certainly keeps us focused on one really important constituency that will be having to deal as they are now and will in the future with the effects of the decisions that we make. So my hat's off to all of us and everybody who's made comments tonight. I have no hesitation whatsoever with the ordinance. I have some concern with the mayor's proposal. I believe in all sincerity that everybody is coming at this from a great place, and the need to move quickly is really important. I think the need to avoid unintended consequences is important too. One of the groups that's was not included, and I don't know that I don't think it's intentional. But the EVC hasn't had a chance to consider this and have folks weigh in. And I am also a little bit concerned about whatever effects there might be on affordable housing. I don't want a lot of delay. I think the way to deal with that, I'm supportive of the staff proposal in the end, but I think we need to light a fire quickly to try to address the pieces that the mayor has mentioned, because I think they're important. I'm not suggesting I don't believe that they're important to pass. I think they may well be, but I think the input that we get will help make them better for our own community. And knowing what the stakes are, I think more information is better in that situation. I certainly wouldn't want to wait any more than 6 months. I think we would need to, and I would support strong direction to get somebody on board if we need consulting help to the extent we need it. And it sounds like we do that right away, and that we try to get that process up and running. or at least alternatively, find some ways, and I think EVC is one, that's just one that I serve on, right? That getting the input of folks that we've promised to provide some input on, I think is a really good idea. I don't think it's inconsistent with anything people have said, except jumping in right away, imposing something without getting, I think, essential input from others. So that's what I would say. Thanks.
Thanks, Councilmember Lake. Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it. I think that my perspective on this is that if we were to put this to a vote of the people, it would pass. We don't need more engagement on this. I think that the public is well engaged on this particular topic, and they're relying upon their elected representatives, us, to do the right thing. Electrification is the way of the future. These net zero appendices are the way of the future. We get caught up a lot in not wanting to be the first to do things. But sometimes being the first is to be on the right side of history before anybody else. I'm reminded of, that's all I'll say. I think it's important for us. I'm routinely disappointed in the stance of this council, who is so pro sustainability and yet seems to be unwilling to take the next best step.
Councilmember Dickinson.
Thanks. So, I mean, I think the 2021 IECC is a great next step. I think all 7 of us are excited about taking. I think, you know, if we want to make, I think where my problem comes in is I'm flexible on this. I'm excited for net zero construction, and for reference, I remodeled a 130-year-old home and put incredible personal cost to make it all electric and incredibly energy efficient, which is very difficult to do with a 130-year-old historic home. So no confusion that this is something I care deeply about, and I put my money where my mouth is to do exactly that in my home. There is very little new residential construction happening in Louisville over the next 50 years, like very, very little. If we want to make an impact, what we need to be doing is mandating retrofitting of all of our buildings. That's a big move. That's saying we're doing something important. Saying the building that's not going to get built tomorrow has to be built more efficiently is going to have almost no impact on the world. But what's really hard to do is to say, hey, the 9,000 homes we have, let's make them energy efficient. Let's do something as a community. Let's commit as a community to retrofit our homes, and every single individual do that work. That's, I mean, of course, as a resident who's not building a new home, we're all going to want the next person who's building the next home to do it better than we did it ourselves. The US wants every other country not to do coal, even though we had an entire industrial revolution of using it, but now no one can use it, right? So the real effort, the real passion, the real effect is in us doing the kinds of things that we did with our home. But I'm not against this code. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I would love for the next buildings to be more energy efficient than the ones last year, and over and over and over again, and it should be. And, you know, as we get more and more efficient electricity, because again, a lot of the electricity that we're going to power our homes with is coming from coal plants, right? And so it's better that we are energy efficient in our homes, and that's awesome. But we still have to work on the bigger grid and getting more clean energy to our homes. I have 120-foot trees and can't do solar panels in my house. It's frustrating. You know, things like that are going on everywhere. But, you know, my concern is I don't really understand the effect and the speed. So if we adopt that appendix tonight, does that mean that someone who's building a home next month, like how quickly does it go into effect? And staff, you can answer this. I'm trying to understand, like, if someone is currently in a construction process, I imagine they're grandfathered in, but if someone hasn't pulled a permit today, but they're going to pull a permit tomorrow, do they have to go back to the drawing board and redesign their building based on what we decide tonight? Like, how quickly does this go into effect? And I guess the other big question is what is the effect on affordability? If we are going to do new housing in Louisville, I hope it's affordable housing. I hope we have some affordable housing and new housing. How does this affect affordable housing? I need to understand those pieces, because I want to make sure that we're thinking about that. And lastly, I know council's hard. We have these like speeches instead of back and forth. But the last thing is, oh shoot, what is the last thing? Oh, our packet, right? It says that this has a zero fiscal impact on Lewisville. I think if we care about this, I think it should have a fiscal impact on Lewisville. I think the city of Lewisville should be incentivizing, putting programs in place. I think we need to be putting our money where our mouth is to say this is important. To have this packet come out and say, we're going to ask homeowners and business owners and developers and all these people to spend a lot of money doing really important work, I think is great. But I think we need to match that with our dedication towards it as well. This shouldn't have a zero impact for Lewisville. So I know I talk about a lot of things, but staff, if you can answer a couple of those questions, especially about the speed and the affordability, affordable housing pieces, that'd be great.
Director Zakara, you want to take on the implementation on an ordinance?
So yes, so whatever, if once something's passed, it goes into effect 30 days after it's advertised. The ordinance is advertised. So for example, I think if this was passed this evening, whatever version is passed, it would be advertised October 24th. So 30 days after October 24th. So I think November 24th approximately is when the ordinance would go into effect. Anybody who submitted a building permit prior to that effective date would not have to comply with the ordinance. Anybody who submits a building permit after that effective date would have to comply with the ordinance. We don't have information on effect on housing affordability. That's the type of information. So because the zero energy appendix wasn't included in the original proposal, it wasn't reviewed and background information wasn't provided on it, as it wasn't part of the proposal itself. I think that's one of the reasons why staff would again recommend that there be some additional public process, is to do that research and try to get input and best practice on that. Did I answer your other questions? There were two that I think I answered there.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're answering as best you can. I appreciate that.
Thank you. And we'll just take a couple more council comments and then go back to the final round of public comment. So really good discussion from folks. Some of the comments I heard from people were concerned around unintended consequences of additional action tonight. I just want to remind everybody that there are unintended consequences of inaction. And that's really important to think about. And so each day of delay, there are unintended consequences of inaction. And we all, read the news and see the species extinction day by day, see the projections on where things are going, and see the urgency of this problem. And so there are unintended consequences, whatever we do tonight, whether we act and do some things we might not fully understand, or if we don't act and do some things we don't fully understand. So I just want to remind everyone of that. And there are a couple of comments about affordability. There's a lot of information in our packet in this 1,000 pages about doing these types of things, bringing down costs to the end user. And so like in housing affordability, like the long-term projections on gas and natural gas prices are escalation over time, and the long-term cost projections on electricity, particularly that's generated on site, are to drop over time. And so, I mean, these things are in our packet tonight for you to have read for the meeting. So we have a lot of information. We have a lot of public engagement. So some of the comments I'm hearing are frustrating to me. I'm sorry if that frustration is coming through. There are a couple community members that spoke tonight that just I hope you think about this when the next round of public comment comes and when we're thinking about making the decision. But Isabel stated it so well that we need to make sure whatever we pass tonight is the lowest greenhouse gas emissions possible. And we have some really easy ways of doing that. And it might not be exactly perfect and we can continue to improve it over time. But I would just encourage the council to push for that. I know that's what we all care about. And I know we just have different tactics about how to get there. And then another comment, it was Mr. Toberg's birthday. I think we all remember that commenter. And so I can imagine him writing a book at some point in his life. And it's about the time that he came to city council and spoke. And the council either did or didn't listen to him on his birthday. And we either did or didn't include the net zero appendices on his birthday. And either way, it'll make an interesting book that, you know, the council did listen and it made a big difference. And because our community adopted those appendices, it made it easier for the neighboring communities to do it. It made it easier for Fort Collins and Denver and Lafayette and Erie and Longmont to do it because somebody had done it and gone first and was brave. And you know, what a big success it was. Or it could be a book about how, you know, I went and I testified and the council didn't do it. And there are all these species that are extinct and I can't have children and I can't drive a car. And, you know, people in developing countries can't afford electricity. So, I mean, I just can imagine the book going a lot of different ways. And I know it sounds dramatic and you hear people talking about climate crisis and it seems far away and it seems like something that we don't have to deal with it. But like, this is the thing that we have local control over and how we can deal with it. And so I hope I get to read the good version of Mr. Toberg's book about his birthday and when he testified at City Council. So I just would really encourage everybody to think about stretching beyond where we're maybe all the very most comfortable and thinking about that zero energy appendix to be added. Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to reemphasize my support for the appendices, as well as the striking the fuel gas options. I've heard a lot of my fellow council members talk tonight about the energy efficiency upgrades to their homes and how important this issue is to them, and yet they're really unwilling to make that and turn that into policy. And so, you know, I appreciate that sustainability is personally important to them, but we don't make policy by personal action. We make policy by collective action. We make policy by holding people accountable, by making rules. And that's what's required of us tonight. So I also think it's interesting that some council members have said that, you know, requiring new construction to be all electric or to be net zero doesn't actually do anything. What we should really be doing is retrofitting. And I certainly agree that would be a more effective way to deal with climate change. But I also know that I don't see those same council members making amendments to that effect. I know that criticizing fellow council members makes some of my council members uncomfortable, but when I disagree with people, I will make sure that that is noted. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Maloney.
Well, Mayor, I'm very concerned about the tone of this conversation. We should be talking about the matter at hand. We should be talking about making policy, and we're getting out of those bounds. So I'm taken back by that, and I think it's unproductive.
Will you help bring us back in? Help us recenter our comment. Thanks.
I would like to attempt to do that. You know, I hear the comments, and I don't really hear disagreements about direction. You know, number one, I think everybody agrees with what staff has proposed as far as the international code. And, you know, staff has proposed a phase 2, which is part of our work plan. And yes, we are in Q4. the director has said it would take 3 to 6 months. So that may be a little longer than Q4. I think what's important here is so we move towards a direction that we all support. And I believe that is true. We talked about net zero, and Councilor Lipton was one of those people that brought that up in a previous discussion several months ago. The all electric, I think, that's something that I think we all support, but I think that we need to have more information on, we need to have more discussion on. And we're not talking about, 10 years from now, we're talking about months from now. I think we're all committed to that. It's in our work plan. As you said, we all voted on it unanimously. So what if it takes 4 months from now? So we're a month longer than the end of the year. I think we're getting stuck on details here that are less important than creating policy and creating direction on something that we essentially all agree upon. Thank you, Mayor.
Could we take a break?
So we're going to let the members of the public comment again before we take a break. Let's at least wrap up council discussion, and then we'll take a break and then take the final round of public comment. How about that? Okay. Councilmember Lay.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Like I said, very good discussion tonight. And I don't think anybody has said in any of the discussions tonight that they frankly disagree with the direction that anybody else has offered, no matter how aggressive the issues, only whether we have a little bit more public input from people who haven't had a chance to chime in yet. So I don't. I do think that we're sort of working toward a consensus, and I hope that it'll be interesting to hear what the public thinks on the next round. Thanks.
All right, so please everybody stay tuned. I know it's hard through a break like this to stay on, but I just encourage everybody to. We'll take just a short 5-minute break, and then we'll be right back here. So it's 8:11 now, and we'll be back at 8:16. As soon as we get a quorum, we'll get started again. All right, thanks everybody. Welcome back. And we're still talking about the building code update. We have some members of the public that are ready to comment, and we're on our public comment section. This is our final round of public comment on this topic tonight. And so please raise your hand if you'd like to tell us something. First, we have Matt Kruger.
Matt, you're going to need to unmute on your end.
All right, well, while that's getting worked out, we'll go with Mark Cathcart. Matt will come back to you once we figure out the delay.
Hello, good evening, Mayor, City Council. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Hello, my name is Mark Cathcart. I live at 1763 Sweet Clover Lane. I was a Greenpeace frontline activist from 1989 to 1995. Unfortunately, IBM told me my activities were inconsistent with my employment and I had to choose, and I chose IBM, which is actually fairly depressing because everything science was telling us back then has come true and so much more. I think as citizens, we all understand that Lewisville options are limited. Requiring new development to adopt all electric is absolutely right. I listened to Mayor Pro Tem Maloney, who seems to be in favor of delaying adoption of the appendices that were proposed, I think, and claiming that 4 months wouldn't make any difference. I would like to ask Mayor Pro Tem Maloney to discuss with Director Zuccaro what additional residential plans will come through and potentially get approved in that time. It's my understanding that we are likely to see both North End Block 11 and Coal Creek Village in that time, which would give us an extra 300 plus residencies. Does that make a difference? When I signed a contract with Markel Homes to build my house in Lewisville, I also added all the possible energy efficiencies I could. I took over the supply of electric from Markel 1 month before I closed on the building so that I could get the solar system installed the day after, or at least started. I've never paid a dime for electric. I get $30+ back a month from Excel. I wish Markel would have offered a heat pump instead of the gas heat that we have. They wouldn't even consider it. Please adopt the changes to require all new properties to go all electric. I am sure in the next few years that the national US government or the federal government will come forward with greater plans like the UK has done this month to retrofit heat pumps into their 26 million homes. We need to do something more than just put this off again because we're afraid to make courageous decisions. Thank you, Mayor and City Council, for all you do.
Thank you. Next, we have RJ Harrington.
Good evening, Council, and thanks again for taking additional comment. RJ Harrington, 457 East Raintree Court. I started my last comments and I was verklempt some tears of joy were being shed. I've verklempt again, and I am now going into another mode of depression. As I suggested in my comments previously, that any amendments that council would propose should strengthen the code and strengthen the ordinance that was being considered for adoption. And instead, I get to hear folks say that we need to follow convention. I'm seeing some faces on the screen that are indicating sensitivities might be getting ruffled. And I wonder if any of the folks that are saying, oh, well, there's only a few months. Maybe if we spend more money on more consultants, we can get some more definitive answers to talk about how we should do things. Not only did Mr. Cathcart speak to the number of new homes that might come online in the next number of months, but we forget that more and more of the homes that we see being built today are old homes that might have otherwise been retrofitted, but instead they're being scraped and built anew. Did any of us hear the voice of the youth? I know I'm going to be dead long before these significant impacts hit. We're already feeling several impacts today. So perhaps the decisions that were made tonight will not affect me tomorrow, but it will affect our youth several tomorrows from now. We know that the CapEx has been discussed as being maybe pennies higher on the front end. We know the OpEx is significantly lower, dollars lower over time. The savings will be significant. The protection that we afford to our species and our biosphere are even more significant. This council needs to go bold. I completely support what Mayor Stolzman has proposed and what Kyle thinks that he is in support of. I ask the rest of you, look deep within and do the right thing.
Thank you. Next, we have Maxine Most.
Hi, Maxine Most, 640 West Linda Street. As I'm listening to this conversation and I'm listening to the comments, particularly thinking about the children, which we should all be focused on above all else, I wonder if you want to delay the implementation of this proposal or even the strengthened proposal, and there's a concern about the impact that that's going to have on upcoming development. Perhaps we need a moratorium on any new building construction until the city council can fully analyze this proposal. I don't think it's ideal, but I think it's reasonable given the gravity of what we're talking about and the impact that this is going to have, for decades and decades to come. And that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Tiffany Boyd.
Hi, thank you. Tiffany Boyd, 550 Grant Avenue. As a member of the Louisville Sustainability Advisory Board, I'm going to use my time to read sections of the letter that is in your packet, just because it seems to kind of put an underlying emphasis on many of the things that are being discussed. First, the 2021 IECC code also includes an optional Zero Energy Homes Appendix, which you've heard a lot about. This would recommend that the city of Louisville needs to adopt this quickly, hopefully tonight. It provides cities and states an opportunity to include zero energy building performance, as the stretch code
that illustrates what is within reach for the next code update. This stretch code describes the need for on and off-site renewable energy, which is an opportunity to accelerate plans to adopt zero energy codes. We believe that cities who are serious about greenhouse gas emission reductions should adopt the code and the Zero Energy Homes Appendix. This adoption will align Lewisville with other communities in our region. Integrating a Zero Energy Appendix into Lewisville's adoption will make the Energy Code a more robust policy tool. This adoption can smooth the transition to zero energy for builders rather than picking and choosing our own net zero code language, leading to a patchwork of zero energy residential code approaches, which is very frustrating to contractors and builders. There's never been a more important time for Lewisville to step up in this area. Some of the most aggressive strategies in greenhouse gas reduction are being developed at the city level. Amelie said tonight, local change leads to big change, which helps with climate change. When it comes to building decarbonization, cities have the ability to accelerate voluntary local and regional actions. Many cities across the country, the state of California, almost Oregon, are recognizing that their leadership position when it comes to this reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. LSAB strongly believes that Lewisville should join these cities, join these states, and set very aggressive goals and strategies to move decarbonization forward. Again, thank you so much for your commitment to our community and all of the time you're pouring in to listening to all this feedback. And we really hope that you adopt these codes and give future generations in Lewisville the very best chance for a livable future. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public care to comment tonight? Mike Kransdorf.
Thank you. I may have heard this wrong, but I'm hearing that the city does not consider the business community to be a part of the Lewisville community. As Councilmember Brown said, if full adoption of these appendices went to a vote of the people, of course they would pass. Of course they would. But please believe business wants to work with the city and needs the city to work with businesses. I'm just not hearing that you want to reach out and work. You know, here are the rules, take them. To the mayor's comment, of course, the long-term projections for electrification are better over time. And that's why Denver's codes phase these in. The simplistic choices of adopt or deny just don't get us where we want to be. I hope you'll recognize what a tiny part of your business community I am. I'm a small property. I show up because I love Lewisville. Why wouldn't you ask for more input from more small owners like me? Take the time, as Councilmember Lipton said, a couple of months. Please don't discount how much builders and property owners want to help and want to do the right thing. We're there with you, but take some time and please accept some input. That's all I say. Thanks.
Next, we have Andy Johnson.
Okay, thank you. Thank you again for hearing public comment, and thank you for listening to all this and taking it in. I very much appreciate, as a citizen of Lewisville, how much you guys do listen to the broad spectrum of everybody involved within Lewisville. So I do want to talk just on a practical note. It's very encouraging that I think we are moving towards adoption of the IECC. I think really we're just talking about the appendices. The commercial and residential are, I believe, being suggested. Residential, from a practical standpoint, is doable. And just out of our own offices portfolio of work currently, we have 4 near zero energy homes under construction, with a fifth in the county, not within Louisville. And we have 1 completely electrified zero energy home that was completed 2 years ago in Lafarge. These are great case studies. I'm not trying to promote anything shamelessly in terms of our own work, but they are good demonstrations, and I'm not aware of any others. And we'd be more than happy to work with the city in terms of providing information on how it's done. We are currently working with a major manufacturer of heating and cooling equipment that is producing all electric heat pump solutions for homes, as well as new products that are coming online for retrofits. That is a significant advancement and provides real world ability to address a very broad spectrum of homes within Lewisville and around the nation. In terms of commercial, this is going to be a hard switch to flip. You can't just go there automatically. I do think that Director Sakara has very good insight and very good suggestion that there needs to be time involved for the appendices to be evaluated. I think you can adopt the residential because there are abilities intact now for that to happen, as long as remodels are continue to be addressed appropriately. And I think that the commercial will require more time. However, I think a commitment to that this evening in terms of a time frame to be able to adopt that would also be very appropriate. So thank you again.
Thank you. Any other members of the public care to comment tonight on this topic? All right, thank you all very much for offering all those comments tonight. And that just takes us back to council to wrap up our discussion on this topic. And so let's try to be concise and get to a finishing point on this one. Councilmember Lipton.
Thank you, Mayor. I think this has been a very intriguing conversation tonight. You know, I'm still not convinced that we don't need a little bit more collaboration on the various appendices. I would like to suggest that council allow certainly the business community to have some very vigorous collaboration on the appendices and engagement. And I'd like to hear from, personally, I would have wanted to hear from some additional residential architects and designers to get some more feedback. I think if we pass the ordinance tonight, we are taking a very significant step forward. I think Katie mentioned in her presentation, this would clearly get us ahead of the pack, if not to be the first municipality in certainly Boulder County to adopt these. And I think that would be an important signal to send, and I think it's the right thing to do. So with that, I'm going to propose that we approve ordinance number 1816, series 2021, as presented by staff.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion of the motion from folks? Being no comments from members, I'll make a substitute motion to adopt. Sorry, I'm on the wrong page. To adopt ordinance number 1816, but to add an amendment where we would add the, I need to go back to my other page. Zero energy residential and commercial appendices in section 15.18.20, and where we would strike fuel gas options from new commercial buildings and new residential buildings. Is there a second?
Second.
So is there any discussion of the substitute motion? Councilmember Dickinson.
So does striking the fuel gas options for commercial also make it so that they can't use that as like backup generator fuel source?
So my intention is that there'd be no fossil infrastructure to new buildings.
And so, again, I'm just trying to understand. So would, we had this conversation earlier, so would the replacement likely be diesel as the backup?
What most places are doing that are going all electric that have analyzed this are using diesel temporarily for the backup electric until there's battery storage, backup electric generation.
Thanks. No.
Any other discussion on the substitute motion? All right, I heard a lot of good, actually agreement on all the points, and I think there's just tactical differences on how we proceed. So, you know, I do think this is a very emotional topic for everyone because of how much the planet touches all of our lives and because of how much we all care about sustainability. And I don't think that there's any doubt that all of us care about this. And so I would hope that you could be supportive of the amended ordinance this evening. I think it's what the community would want. There has been really good engagement on these topics. It has gone through a very robust public process, and we've gotten input from a lot of different stakeholders, and I really thank them all for participating. I think that's fantastic. It sounded like there's a commitment from council in any case of what happens tonight to bring back additional discussion about a number of progressive topics, including amortization on retrofits. I heard Councilmember Dickinson bringing that up. Green roofing standards, waste diversion from construction sites, further, and depending on what happens on this motion, further commitments on all electric and net zero. So I think we have a lot of work cut out for us, and I heard a lot of commitments to doing it in a 3 to 6 month time frame. So regardless of which version passes tonight, I hope we can make clear direction to staff on what to do as follow up from whatever comes out of this. Councilmember Dickinson.
Thanks, Mayor. So does your substitute motion, we didn't really, I don't think council had really almost any conversation about the electrical vehicle component of the packet tonight. I know public talked about it and some staff talked about it, but I don't think council talked about it. So we all, I'm assuming that's included in your motion. I'm just curious if there's any conversation to be had about that topic at all from anyone.
I wasn't proposing making any changes to it. It's pretty consistent with the communities around us and their required spaces. If people want to modify it to have some additional spaces that are actually built instead of just EV ready, I think that'd be an interesting conversation to have. But just seeing what happened in Lafayette with Medtronic with their code, they actually made waivers to some of their electric vehicle space requirements in their first big build out of it. So that's why I wasn't proposing any additional modifications there, but I think it'd be an interesting discussion.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't mind, I really like the, and we're talking about new construction here, the EV capable is very inexpensive, very easy to do. And I could see those numbers going up because you're basically running conduit. I could also see EV ready, maybe increasing as again, that it's sort of the same thing. You need the capacity and you're just including the wiring. And I think the EV installed numbers are fine as they are. It could even go down as far as a requirement. Like once you have all the infrastructure there, again, super important residential, super important in long stay. I think what was the phrase, dwelling time or dwell time, you know, how long people are actually at a place, right? So I have an electric car and I've never plugged it in anywhere other than somewhere where I was staying for a very long time because it takes hours to charge. So I'm probably fine where the numbers are, but I don't know if anyone's interested in a discussion of increasing the EV capable or ready or decreasing the installed, or of course you could have a different opinion of going a different direction on any of those, but just wanted to see if there were any thoughts on it.
Any thoughts on Councilmember Dickinson's topic on the EV spaces from folks?
Okay, well, I'm comfortable with staff's recommendations. I don't need to push something that isn't, yeah, that's fine.
Thanks, Councilmember Dickinson. And the other topic that I didn't circle back on ever, but I asked a lot of questions around the insulation and R values. And I do think what was proposed in the code is stronger, but I understand the comments that were made by the Building Code Board of Appeals. I do think that that's something we need to revisit much sooner than 4 years, especially on new builds where there are plenty of technologies for continuous installation. But I'm willing to leave it like it's been amended. And I didn't know if any other members were concerned about that point or wanted to make any other comments on the installation. All right, any other discussion on the amended motion? All right, City Clerk Muth, could we please have a roll call vote?
Councilmember Lay?
Point of order. You said amended motion. Do you mean substitute motion?
I apologize, Councilmember Lay, let me clarify that. Yep. So we're voting on the substitute motion now. I apologize for that.
No.
Councilmember Brown?
Yes.
Councilmember Lipton?
No.
Mayor Stolzman?
Yes.
Councilmember Fahey?
Yes.
Councilmember Dickinson?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Maloney?
No.
Thank you. And that brings us back to the main motion. Any discussion on the main motion? Councilmember Dickinson.
I'd like to make a substitute motion to basically echo yours, Mayor, but dropping the commercial index or indices, sorry, or appendix. So basically same motion, but without the commercial.
I'll second that. Any discussion, or would you like to speak to your motion, Councilmember Dickinson?
I'll just say that I'm super torn on the whole thing. I'm very excited about all of this and desperately want to vote yes on these things, and was very excited about the meeting tonight to vote yes on the what was put forward by staff, and very excited to move forward with the next topics. And I think all 7 of us were really excited about that. And I think we're calling this, people are saying that some of us are trying to delay this action, and I'm not trying to delay it. I think people are trying to accelerate it, which I appreciate and respect that people are trying to accelerate it, and that's great. And I was fine with the pace we were on. I thought that we were making great progress tonight, giving staff some time to move the next items forward. And so I was very excited for tonight's meeting and feel like I'm in a position where voting no is being framed as being anti-environment and anti these topics that I'm so for. And so I can't really go on record voting against something I'm in such support of, but I'm very frustrated that we couldn't follow staff's recommendation to kind of follow their path. But with that said, I think that the residential can handle this. I think that they're already there in a lot of ways. I think there's very little development coming, and I think it can be met in this manner. And I apologize to staff for your having to kind of chase this now, but I think we can handle this part. I was just more concerned about the commercial and whether we're ready there. But I'm not done having that conversation. To the point of my earlier comment, I would be happy to continue that conversation to add this appendix later with some more conversation. But I'm trying to, what's the phrase, virtue signal here, that I am in support of this, and I'm willing to vote kind of against my process to make that point clear to all of you.
Thanks, Councilmember Dickinson. Mayor Pro Tem Maloney.
I'm unclear on what's been proposed as a substitute motion. So could you help me out, Councilor Dickinson? I think I heard the amendment. I only heard one amendment, and that was adding the RC on page 269 for a residential net zero. Is that the only thing you're proposing changing?
Correct. Adding that to staff's recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
And Councilmember Dickinson, I just will clarify too. So in my proposal, I was proposing all electric also in commercial and residential. So do you want to add all electric in either of those applications?
Thank you, Mayor. are you proposing that amendment to my?
I thought that's what you said, actually. So if you need it as a friendly amendment, I mean, what I was wondering is, I thought what I heard you saying is that you wanted to just focus on the residential side and have further discussion on the commercial side. So were you proposing
That was my intention.
Striking the fuel gas options for the residential side and new builds, in addition to the zero energy residential appendix? And I'm not trying to I'm just trying to clarify, just like Mayor Pro Tem Maloney was.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think I am not striking that. I think that as I understand it, the current proposal has all new construction being electric ready, so that if they put gas in there, it has to be high efficiency gas with the electric conversion already there to speed in that conversion. So we're not dealing with expensive retrofits, and I'm comfortable with that gradual conversion in the residential. So I may lose a couple votes with that.
Okay, so the amended motion is ordinance number 1816, but adding in the zero energy residential appendix in the section 15.18.20. Just so everybody's clear on what the motion is. And the seconder agrees with the interpretation of the motion. Councilmember Lay.
Can I ask a quick question of staff? And I think this is a question for Interim Deputy City Manager Zakara. Do I have that right? Yes.
That's good. That's fine.
Good enough. As between, we were talking a bit before about the need for potentially consulting help regarding the appendices, but we weren't distinguishing between the two of them. I gather, I mean, from Councilmember Dickinson's motion, he's excluding the commercial, but do you foresee a lot of changes with respect to, or a lot of difficulty in implementing the residential side of this if that were passed?
So
is that something that would be required? I'm just sort of trying to balance that because we put them together before.
So when I was talking about the consulting help, there's a couple things. One is Katie had talked about this DOLA grant that we're going to participate in, and part of that DOLA grant is it's phased just like council's work plan. One is to adopt the IECC, and then the second phase is to create a net zero strategy for all the communities to follow. So, what steps the city should take to get to the point where you would have a net zero code. So I think the consulting help that we were talking about would be to understand how to implement maybe what some of the, what's constructible, what's not constructible. We had a lot of discussions tonight about technical items of how do you attach things to homes that have exterior continuous insulation. So, we'd have engineering firms that could advise us on, things like that could come up. I think that, taking City of Boulder as an example, they require net zero for large homes, 3,000 square feet and over. But for smaller homes and for commercial development, right now they do offsets, so they kind of have a hybrid. So I think what we would want a consultant for is to help advise us on some of the technical aspects, maybe on, we'd probably want to propose to City Council different versions. You could do all, just adopt the appendices as is, everything's net zero, that's it. Or maybe you have something more similar to Boulder, at least for the interim, and then you transition into 100%. We don't know, but the idea is that we present options for consideration. And so I think that's the purpose of the consultant, that's some of the reasons why we'd want to have a consultant. Did you have any, was there other questions, or was that the main?
No, I think what you've heard from a number of people and members of the public is, you know, consultant sometimes equals delay and complications, and instead of the ability to move faster because you've got the bandwidth and the ability to cut through stuff and get to closure more quickly. And that's a part of what I was interested in. But in terms of the residential, I get it. What's the timing on the DOLA piece? Because that sounds like something down the road.
Yeah, so Katie may know more about that, but that's that process is starting now. And I think Katie had mentioned a 6 to 9 month process for adoption of IECC throughout the participating communities. But Katie, do you know the time frame to create the strategic plan to go to a net zero code?
Yeah, when I talked with Sweep and Lotus, they are planning to actually begin that process in February 2022 on the net zero piece.
So I think we don't know what the time frame to do the whole project would be. And then I think there'd probably be a strategic plan, and then maybe each city would adopt variations of different things. I'm not sure how much continuity there'd be between the different cities. And then as far as, I think you did ask a question about implementing. So if the city council did implement the appendices as is, as far as verifying that, you know, our staff would have to get up to speed. We may have, I guess, some consultant help to do code reviews and inspections, at least initially. I don't know if Hope has any thoughts on how to implement the appendices and what effort that takes. If you have any initial thoughts, because I think that was one of Councilmember Lay's questions as well.
Thanks, and Hope, if you could also just clarify on Director Zucchero sort of inferred that it would have to be all on-site net zero. If you could just kind of describe how the net zero appendix actually works, that'd be great.
Well, as far as the residential side, the net zero appendices actually works off of the energy rating index, which is very similar to HERS score. But if the residential is adopted, it's not based off of the adopted of what your code is. It's a number trying to show you're that much better than what if this same house was built to the 2006. And these numbers are ratcheted down pretty significantly, and it would actually override the prescriptive code that's currently being discussed right now.
And then Hope, isn't it true that then you have to generate, you know, renewable energy as well as part of getting to that net zero? So on-site solar or other options?
It includes a path for both utilizing on-site. It gives you a number if you're utilizing on-site. There's a calculation, and then there's one that deals with if you do not have any renewable energy, because not every house is going to have the opportunity to do that. The other thing to keep in mind with that is that when you talk about the energy code and the residential code, that does include multifamily that's 3 stories or less. 3 stories or less would be required to comply with the residential provisions.
Councilmember Lay, that answered your question.
Yeah, thanks.
Councilmember Fahey.
Thank you. Yeah, I have one question on the on-site versus buying RECs. Does that continue on with the future owner if they build it saying that they're going to do RECs, but then a new owner comes on and says, no way? What kind of obligation do they have?
Councilmember Fahey, when I brought up the RECs before, it was on the commercial side. On the residential side, it's a 15-year power purchase agreement for the offsite.
Oh, all right, thank you.
But Hope, if you want to add more into that.
No, that's it. It's a 15-year contract.
And just if people are trying to follow along, the provisions in the residential appendix fits on one page, and it's on page 269 of your packet. Any other discussion of the substitute motion? Is everyone clear what the substitute motion is? It looks like I'm seeing some nodding. I'm not seeing any other hands up. I appreciate all the discussion. This, you know, anytime we talk about building code, it's a lot of technical discussion, and I appreciate the amount of attention all the folks have given to it. And so I talked long enough to try to give you time to ask any questions if you had any, or make any other comments. Councilmember Lipton.
Thank you. So, Rob, you did mention in passing some in discussing the residential component about better understanding what the impact might be to affordability of new residential construction, and then I guess to how that would align with our what might be our housing goals as they're evolving. And I haven't heard any conversation about that tonight, but you seem to be keenly interested in knowing that information. So I was wondering if you had any comments you want to share.
Well, I guess, you know, we don't know. There is some information out there about residential construction cost savings for not bringing gas, for example, into a project. And then the you know, the long-term payback. So, you know, very well net zero construction, depending on the type, whether it's single family or single family attached or multifamily, they may have different cost implications. And we just don't know. At the end of the day, there may be some upfront costs. It may be very minimal. There may be the long-term savings may outweigh that. I think I think we just wanted to suggest that if you don't feel like you have adequate information, because we haven't done the in-depth research, you know, that's something we could bring back in the future if you want to have future conversations, I think is what we're suggesting. I don't think we know, you know, what the cost implications are fully, but there is some basic information out there. We didn't spend a lot of time on it. You know, the code as the code's gone through the current public process, this appendices weren't part of the proposal, nor was an all-electric option. So, you know, while the Sustainability Advisory Board, you know, keenly wanted to include it, you know, it wasn't part of any other public discussion or publication of the code for people to react to. So that's, I think, all we're saying is that having that process allows that time for that discussion, and any questions council may have, staff could research and bring that, and you may end up at the exact same place and make the exact same decision, which is of course your prerogative. We just want to make sure you have the information you need.
Thanks, Rob.
Mayor Pro Tem Maloney.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, as I reflect on some of the comments that have been made, and some of them have been directed at me, you know, I keep going back to our work plan, you know, which is figure 1 on page 234 of the packet. And, you know, we clearly laid out, you know, different things, you know, in phase 1 and phase 2. And the discussion right now is about things in phase 2. And so, you know, did we go as quickly as we wanted? Maybe not. Are we all interested in doing this? Absolutely. But I'd like to see us do this, gathering more information, understanding this in a deeper way. And, you know, we're asking, we didn't ask staff to do this in this phase, but we're asking them now questions that I think would be fairly tough for staff to answer on something that they weren't given the opportunity to actually, or given the time to actually dig into more deeper. So well, I appreciate Councillor Dickinson's thought on, well, we can probably do this when But this discussion has led me to, I would like to see us do this in phase 2 and do phase 2 as quickly as we possibly can. So I'm going to have, probably not going to support the current substitute motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Lipton.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about moving so quickly on this too, although, you know, I understand people's intentions and why they feel compelled to, but, you know, I have some concerns about the economic issues of buying a house, developing property for residential. I don't know if this is a $20,000 item or an additional $50,000 item or what it will be for a new residential dwelling, much less a multi-residential dwelling. And I understand and I know that there is continuing savings, but if our goals are in terms of affordability within the community to get more representation by a more diverse population and have people be able to buy into Lewisville as residents, we can't just keep increasing the prices of housing without thinking about what those impacts are. And the people that might get cost savings over a long period of time, that doesn't help them with the initial cost of getting into a house. And if we're trying to keep things or make things more affordable, particularly for starter homes and for people of lower incomes, we're going the wrong direction. Now, we might be able to go that direction. And maybe as part of this, if we can ask to do some more work, maybe there are some ways of building some incentives, providing some rewards, doing things, perhaps, you know, some abatement of some of our fees, you know, doing things that might, you know, offset the additional costs, but do it in a way that gets us to be able to meet some of our longer term goals as related to housing and diversity. So I would personally, and I know I won't be here, but if I would strongly suggest you allow staff to do some of that kind of research and get some information so you can look at all of this more holistically than just a reaction tonight. I want to get rid of gas or I want to do something solar or whatever it is, but just understand and have the information in terms of what the impacts are. If that just takes a few more months to do, then that's fine. But have that information before you make your decisions. Thanks.
Thanks, Councilmember Lipton. I'll just, we had a public comment around a moratorium, and I think it's an interesting question. So if council members feel that more time is needed, and I heard Councilmember Lipton, you know, saying he didn't have enough information. Some of us do. I had the thousands of pages of information that staff provided, if you include the links to the building code, and then, you know, there's whole volumes of information that you're able to access at our library and through talking to people and other sources. So I understand some people might not have enough information, but others don't. And so I do think it's important to get everybody the information they need to make their appropriate decision. But in the meantime, we had a proposal from a community member to say, well, if we need this additional 6 months to get the code right, and we don't want to put in place buildings that'll be in place for 50 years, adding to emissions, would there be interest from the council from going with the more moderate proposal, but putting in place a moratorium in the meantime while we study this? I wasn't in favor of that going into the meeting tonight. I like to give people a path to be able to complete their projects in a way, and they could do it. And that's why I was proposing what I was. I heard the architect, Andy Johnson, speak about his buildings in town that are already zero fossil infrastructure and producing energy for themselves. And he's not alone. There are many residents that have retrofit their buildings to do that. And the Kestrel Affordable Housing was built so that it had no natural gas on site, no fossil infrastructure. So we have many examples here in town that have already been built that are already doing this. So I just wonder if there's any discussion on the moratorium topic, if we do want to take more time and get more input for the people that need it. Are folks interested in going down that path? I see a lot of head shaking. Councilmember Brown.
I don't think it's an interesting idea, and I would be happy to discuss it more. Seems like there's not a lot of support on council right now. So with that, I'll save my comments.
Thanks, Councilmember Brown. All right, so we have a proposal in front of us, compromise proposed by Councilmember Dickinson. And so I think we'll need to get through this and perhaps the other vote, and then we'll still need to give direction to staff on what to bring back in phase 2. I appreciate your comments, Mayor Pro Tem Maloney, around looking at phase 1 and phase 2. I am disappointed that in fourth quarter, we haven't even started work on phase 2 when we were hoping to have it adopted by fourth quarter. And so my concern is that we get these development applications that come in and have prescriptive timeframes, and it takes staff away from our council work plan work. So I just want to remind the city manager that we would encourage like additional resources when we do have such a heavy development load, and that doesn't look like it's letting up in the next period. So I just would hope we could get our work plan items done on the time frame that we set out, because I think that's what's leading to a lot of the conflict tonight, is that we're not on schedule with our work plan. Any questions about what we're voting on? All right, City Clerk Muth, could we please have a roll call on the substitute motion?
Councilmember Fahey?
Yes.
Councilmember Brown?
Yes.
Councilmember Lay?
No.
Mayor Stolzman?
Yes.
Councilmember Lipton?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Maloney?
No.
Councilmember Dickinson?
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. The motion carries. And so with that, the last thing we need to do is give staff some direction on what to bring back for our phase 2. We've listed around a lot of different topics, and I think it would be useful if we could be clear what we expect them to bring back so that we're all on the same page. Councilmember Lay?
Yeah, the one thing that I think I want to push for is that we set a pretty tight time frame, because I don't think we want to push this out any longer than we have to. It's a priority for all of us, and the faster we can get the information, the better. I think we have had, with all respect to the mayor's comment, we've had 2A that has taken a fairly substantial amount of time. That wasn't, I think, necessarily anticipated to take that much time. It's important, though. All of it's important. All of what we're doing is important. So I would say I'd really like to move forward with this and be in a position to be able to vote on the commercial net zero proposal in 3 months.
Thanks, Councilmember Lay, and thanks for that perspective. There have been a lot of topics. So my encouragement wasn't supposed to be, really a criticism, just that when we need additional staff resources to get our work plan done, we really need to get them. And I know it's been a terrible time to hire, and it's very hard to find staff. There's all these different factors, but I think that making sure we prioritize, and this will be something good for us to all remember in January in the work plan discussion, is that we really do need to prioritize so our highest priority items get done each year. And so Councilmember Lay brought forward the next net zero commercial appendix as part of it. I heard folks talking about all electric as part of the discussion in the next discussion. Is there general consensus that that's within the discussion scope? I'm just looking for nods in general or movement that kind of indicates that people think that that's in the, I think the more we can flesh this out tonight, the less conflict we'll have the next time we discuss this. That's why I'm trying to make sure we give clear direction to staff. Mayor Pro Tem Maloney?
Well, I was just pulling up our work plan. I wanted to make sure we covered everything in there. I don't know, is that something that staff can pull up for us?
Yeah, just give me a minute. I will pull that up.
I just thought that might help with our discussion, Mayor.
Yep. I was just trying to list out the things that had come up in the meeting tonight so far. And so I know we heard from the Sustainability Board around all the things in their letter. So I think we should ensure that we include those topics as topics that we bring forward, including the waste diversion and the green roofing. I don't know that it is actually reasonable to do the discussion around retrofits in 3 months. But I think, you know, we're all interested in that conversation as Councilmember Dickinson brought it forward. Does the group expect retrofits with amortization in it to be completed in this time period? There's head shaking no, generally. Yeah, I think we all recognize that that's a more complicated like topic that we need to, that we all, I think we all agree we need to figure that out.
City Manager, it's 15, it's item number 15 or 16.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Maloney.
If you could just scroll down because 16 goes to the next page. Thank you. Oh. So, Mayor, I do think that some of the things we talked about tonight are covered in here. This general statement at the very end of 16, you know, that promote energy efficiency and carbon reduction. So it's pretty wide scoping.
All right, are there any other things folks want to bring up tonight to ensure are included for this discussion? All right, and what I heard, so there's general agreement that this is very high priority to bring forward. I heard one mention that the hope was that we could get, you know, a time period of 3 months on this. Is that what folks are hoping for? I know we start to lose energy after 9. I'm not trying to push you guys too hard, but I just think the more we can resolve around this, the better. So there's consensus on that, that's the time frame we're hoping for the next phase. Great. All right, that sounds great, everybody. Thank you very much. And so that closes out that agenda item, and it'll take us to our next agenda item, which is ordinance number 1817, series 2021, an ordinance approving the vacation of a 125-foot by 30.60-foot wide right-of-way lying south of Lot 9, Block 10, Louisville Heights subdivision in the city of Louisville at 601 McKinley Avenue. This is our second reading and public hearing. I'll open the public hearing and ask if there are any conflicts of interest. Seeing none, I'll turn it over to Lisa Ritchie, our planning director.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Let me pull up the presentation that I have for you. I will try and go through this maybe a little more quickly, just given the lateness of the hour and how much you guys have already had for discussion. So again, tonight we're here to consider an ordinance that would vacate a portion of right-of-way on the property immediately south of 601 McKinley Avenue. A little bit of context, the right-of-way that is under consideration tonight here is outlined in yellow. So it's immediately south. This is the property at 601 Lincoln. There's an existing residence on this property. And just directly south of the right-of-way is Lewisville Elementary School. So the southern property line is coincident with BVSD. And just for a little bit of context, all of kind of the white property lines that we import from Boulder County are not really accurate in this area. So it appears, I just want to be clear that it appears on this map like there is a gap in the property line, but we work closely with the surveyor and that gap is not real. So just to be clear on kind of adjacency there, we can come back to this if needed. So again, this property was platted in 1904. The right-of-way that was established with this plat was never developed. In 1984, the city approved a license agreement for a fence to be, so that the right-of-way could be enclosed and incorporated into for use by the property owner at 601 McKinley. And so that's still in effect and is in place today. With the city issued a fence permit given the approval of that license agreement. This summer, the applicant purchased 601 McKinley Avenue from a longtime family who owned the property. He intends to redevelop the lot for a number of reasons that really don't come into play specifically as we talk about the right-of-way vacation, but just to be transparent, that is his intention. He did receive, went through a demolition public process through historic preservation, and they placed, I believe it was a 120-day stay, which expires on November 10th. So these images here, this image at the top of your screen is from McKinley Street. And so basically you can kind of see the fenced in portion is where the right of way that would be vacated. The property line you can see here in the survey on the bottom portion of the screen. This dashed line, just for context, this dashed line reflects the property line, and this lighter line right here is the edge of the house. And so you can, just for scale there, you can see the actual property line is just within a few feet of the existing structure there. This is BVSD's fence here. And so that would be, it's basically this area in here that would be vacated. With that, we're recommending approval of the ordinance. Oh, I want to mention one other thing, my apologies. There is an existing sanitary sewer line that is located on BVSD's property, as well as Excel has a utility line buried on the southern portion of the area to be vacated. And so through the approval of this ordinance, we would be establishing a utility easement, roughly 7.9 feet on the southernmost portion for the city to get in and maintain the sewer line that's on BVSD property, but it gives us a little bit of working room, as well as provides for that utility easement. So that's also included with your ordinance. I'm happy to answer any questions. The applicant does not have a presentation, but has a few words to share on their intention.
Thank you. Please tell us what you'd like to tell us.
Was that addressed to me? I apologize.
Yes, I just wasn't sure of who the applicant was, so please. Mr. Thompson.
Thank you very much, Mayor. So my name is Cody Thompson, 601 McKinley Avenue. I've lived in Lewisville for about 8 years now, and I love the character of Lewisville and the charm of the old town. And after having to sell my last house, I knew I wanted to stay in Lewisville, so I began looking for another place. I made some notes here. So the area to the south of McKinley property is owned by the city, but has been licensed to 601 McKinley and has been fenced in as part of that property since 1984. So almost 40 years. 4 decades almost. The property has never been used by the city, and I am told that none of the departments have a need for it, nor is there a need for practical use for the property. I currently maintain the property, and I would like to have some tree maintenance performed on the property, which will cost thousands of dollars. I would like to request the vacation of the right-of-way that is currently licensed and fenced by 601 McKinley as described by staff. And I also understand that there will be an easement on the south section of the right-of-way. The current resident basically goes from the south property line to the north property line and is located so far into the front of the setback that in the front setback that the sidewalk had to be poured around the house and then back around to the correct location south of the home. For these and multiple other reasons, I would like to build a new home that better fits with the neighborhood, including a front porch and even a front door. When trying to design a home for the property, my initial desire was to locate a garage on the west side of the property, which is the rear. But I was informed by the city that the existing alley has not been improved and has been encroached on to the point where the width is no longer usable. I would like to build a home on the property with a garage to the rear of the home, and having the extra square footage from the right-of-way would give me the square footage for a driveway to be used to reach the back of the lot. I know it would increase the size of my lot, but I did some research. Of the 15 lots on the horseshoe that's created from McKinley, the school driveway, and then back up on Garfield, 7 of those, almost half, are over 9,300 square feet, 2 are over 10,000, and 2 more are over 11,300. So the resulting lot size would be compared to about half of the other lots on this block. And yeah, I think that pretty much sums up my research. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And so I'll turn over to members of the public and find out if any members of the public would care to comment on the right-of-way vacation.
Thank you.
Seeing none, that brings us back over to council questions and comments. Any council discussion? Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. Director Ritchie, can you, so the right-of-way, with the right-of-way that the city currently owns this particular property, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and so by vacating the right-of-way, we would no longer own this property. Is that correct?
That's correct. So consistent with state statute, these provisions are set forth in the Colorado state statute. Ownership vests with adjacent property owners for the plat. This right-of-way is on the edge of the plat, therefore the entirety of the ownership would vest with this lot. 601 McKinley.
Okay. What is the value of a plot of this size in Louisville?
So that's a good question. We actually did a fair bit of research for this just internally to understand that. So it depends on what methodology you use. And it's difficult to find an appraiser to do this type of work. So we don't have an official appraisal. What staff did when we tried to kind of do this analysis, I'm gonna have two answers to your question here. One is what we ended up doing to try and value it was do an average of Boulder County assessed land values for this particular part of town, come up with a square foot average, and then multiply that out. Because we did have discussions with the applicant whether or not there should be compensation. However, that being said, we also did research into Colorado state law and statutes, whether or not within the state of Colorado, cities could require compensation for vacation of right-of-way. And City Attorney Kelly determined through her research that cities should not require compensation for right-of-way vacation, that value is embedded within the value of the lot, and that there's no additional monetary value that can be required over and above that. But I'm going to turn any answer around, any answer beyond that, I think, explanation over to City Attorney Kelly, if you will have further questions on whether or not the city can require compensation.
Thank you, Director Ritchie. That's a fascinating legal answer, given that, it's an expansion of someone's property, and the applicant even mentioned that he would be able to expand or build a different or bigger house, which would presumably increase the value of his property.
Yeah, I mean, that is why I think from a staff level, we had those conversations. I think we had a lot of those same questions. And, but again, through legal case law, that's the direction we received from the attorney.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Any other comments from? That takes us back to our second round of public comment. Any members of the public care to comment? RJ Harrington.
Only to say an example of a scrape and new build. Thank you.
Any other members of the public care to comment? All right, seeing none, it takes us back over to council discussion. Any council discussion? I'll start it off. We're usually a more vocal group than this. So I struggle with right-of-way vacations every time because there's not a prescriptive, this is exactly what you do in this exact circumstance. It's a lot, my background's in engineering. I prefer there to be things that are like, this is what you do, this is how you apply it. And this is one of those things that you sort of look at the whole circumstance and understand if there's a public purpose or not. And so on this one, this is a really congested area. People coming in and out, for that school, and we always are having problems with access. So I really thought long and hard about, like, is this a trail connection? Is this a future road? Is this an alley? And I have to admit, I really struggled with it internally around a lot of that. Like, maybe we don't know today what the public purpose is, but there may be one. But at the end of the day, when you look at the configuration here and the way that the alley is not really accessible, and the fact that it's been fenced in since 1984 and cared for by the adjacent owner, I think those factors probably weighed on me more heavily. But I will say, it was a really tough one to understand, like, is there a public purpose? Because this is such a publicly this is a very challenging area from a transportation standpoint, with the school being at this U dead end. And I've been on council since 2013 representing Ward 3, which is within Ward 3, and I get a lot of phone calls around the traffic and the drop off and the walking and all of that. But even thinking through all of that and talking it over with myself, I just think that there's not a solution here that involves this piece of property as a public need. So I'm very interested in hearing other council discussion and wonder if you all arrived at different conclusions yourself. But while this was a challenging one, I think vacation makes sense in this circumstance. Councilmember Dickinson.
Excuse me. Yeah, I mean, I'm conflicted. I voted, I think it was 1-6 to vacate the last one. I found no value in it. This one, it's right next to the school. I could imagine 500 things to do with a spot that's literally touching the school grounds. You could put not shelters, but you know what I mean, the storage sheds there. You could put parking for buses or teachers there. You could put equipment for the schools. You could store goals over there. You could, like, the list goes on and on and on what you could do with a piece of property that's literally touching the school's property. But we haven't used it for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. What is it? 37 years we haven't used it. Clearly we don't want it. Clearly we don't use it. It would be so strange to tear that fence down and take those trees down and take that person's yard to put a storage shed there. I think that would be a crazy thing for us to do. So while I don't really, I mean, I can literally list 20 ways I would use that. And last time we voted no, because there might be something we could think of in the future, maybe. So I'll be voting to vacate this right away. But I'm not really sure. I guess I'm not really sure how this works, but that's my opinion. I think this is this owner's property. It's been their property forever, and I'm fine letting them have it.
Mayor Pro Tem Maloney?
I'm not surprised that you mentioned putting soccer goals there. So, you know, I'm supportive of vacating this because, and it's different from the last one we looked at because we are also maintaining an easement. We were being asked to vacate easements as well. So given those stipulations, I'm going to be supporting this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Lipton?
Yes, could I make a motion to approve ordinance number 1917, series 2021?
Would you like to make that motion? I mean, yes, you can make that motion.
Yes.
Excellent. And there's a second. There's a second by Mayor Pro Tem Maloney. Any discussion of the motion? All right. So I'll close the public hearing and I'll ask for a roll call vote.
Councilmember Brown?
No.
Councilmember Lay?
Yes.
Councilmember Fahey?
Yes.
Councilmember Dickinson?
Yes.
Mayor Stolzman?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Maloney?
Yes.
Councilmember Lipton?
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. That takes us to our next item on our agenda tonight, which is our revised recommendation budget for 2022, including updated capital improvement plan for 2021 to 2026 and updated long-term financial plan for 2021 to 2026. This is our public hearing, and I'll open it right now with my fake gavel, and I'll ask for a staff presentation from our city manager.
Good evening, City Manager, and I'm sorry, that's me. It is getting late. Good evening, City Council and Mayor. We are happy to provide the revised budget based on the input that we've received from City Council over the past 3 budget meetings that we've had. We've had great discussions around this, and we've captured all of the input. The council communication that you see this evening reflects each of those meetings and all of the adjustments and modifications that were made during those discussions. And I'm going to turn it over to Director Watson, who will give just a quick overview, and then we'll open it up for council comments.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Megan. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I trust you can hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, The agenda documentation for the public hearing on the 2022 proposed budget starts on page 905 of your packet. Since this is the public hearing on the proposed budget, we have included a more comprehensive city council communication and an overall budget summary using PowerPoint presentation slides. And in addition to the attachment that you had received in previous meetings, we have also attached a key performance indicators update and a strategic plan priorities initiative update. So as the interim city manager stated, this is our 4th meeting, and I too believe that we have captured all the council's recommendations from the previous meetings in this latest presentation. So I'm not going to go through the PowerPoint presentation slides, but I'm happy to discuss any of the slides or any of the other information in the packet. So with that, I will end my comments and try to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Director Watson. And so we'll turn it over to the members of the public to hear from you if you have any comments on our proposed agenda, proposed budget, which is reflective of our agenda. Seeing no comments, it takes us back over for council comments. I just really want to thank staff for all the work on this. We have a lot of input from community members, from all our different stakeholders, from council members, from department heads. So thank you for engaging on all of that and working to build these different things in. I just want to remind folks of a couple things that we're not including in the budget, but that council has committed to, just so that folks know when that comes back for budget amendment, we won't say, why wasn't this included or why wasn't this addressed? And the reason is staff has told us they need to do a little bit more work on the number side to understand exactly where these will fall, but we've all made commitments to these things. So I just want to remind everybody that we've talked about doing money for premium pay and retention strategies. That was around the workers that have been coming in even during the stay-at-home times, and then around our other workers in retention. We've talked about doing money for dark sky incentives. So to help with that amortization schedule, we've committed that we wanted to have a program put together to help offset the cost for that. And that money's not been included for our consideration tonight, but the staff are going to work on that and bring it back. And we also had a great presentation on DEI, and there were some suggestions that will require some budget amendments at a future time. So around like banners for light poles, murals, other festivals and activities, and some other studies and things that we need to do to further those efforts. So those are some areas that staff's committed to and working on. And so you don't need to ask questions about why they're not included. They're just not ready yet. And the staff is planning to either bring them back in the 2021 budget amendment or early in the year in the 2022 budget amendment. And other than that, I just want to say thanks to everybody for all their engagement through the different parts of this process and up to this point. Other council comments? All right, seeing none, I think that we have one more round of public comment on this one. Let me just make sure. We do not. This is a one round public comment one on our agenda. So I'll just leave it to council members if you have any final comments or motions that you'd like to make. Mayor Pro Tem Maloney.
I'm not sure what motion we're making, aren't we?
It just says action, so that's why I thought, you know, there would be a motion, but maybe any further direction, if there's any further direction at this time.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense, Mayor. I understand that. I just want to echo what you said. I do appreciate all the work that staff has done on this. And, you know, here we are at I think Director Watson said the 4th meeting, and we don't really have any questions because we've worked through all those. And I think the budget we have represents our policy and our directions. Thank you very much to staff.
All right. So I will close the public hearing on this then, and thanks staff, and we look forward to taking action. I believe that's November 1st. Is that the correct date?
That's correct.
All right, we'll see you all then. And so our next agenda topic for tonight is our local licensing authority festival permits topic. It's ordinance number 1818 series 2021, an ordinance amending chapter 5.08 of the Louisville Municipal Code to authorize the local licensing authority to issue festival permits and to update statutory references in that chapter. This is our second reading and public hearing as advertised in the Daily Camera. And we'll also be taking up resolution number 73, series 2021, a resolution approving a festival permit fee. I'll open the public hearing and ask if there's any disclosures from members. Seeing none, I'll turn it over to Jenny Klein from the clerk's office to take us through this one. Thank you so much, staff, for bringing this forward to our attention. And you're on mute. Sorry, Jenny.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and council members, for your time this evening. I will make this quick because of the lateness of the hour. Earlier this spring, the Colorado General Assembly passed Senate Bill 2182, which opened up festivals not to just wineries, but also liquor license holders that held beer and wine, hotel and restaurant, tavern, brew pub, vintner, distillery, pub, manufacturer, wholesaler, or limited winery license. So now any of these holders are able to organize and or attend a festival anywhere in the state, and any of these license holders are allowed to participate in up to 9 events per year. The way the new state law is written, the only requirement that an organizer has to the local municipality is to inform them 10 days in advance of an event. There is no other public input that the municipality would get on such a festival, unless the festival was held on public property, like in a park, like the Boulder Valley Wine Festival is held in one of our Lewisville parks, or in Steinbach Pavilion, excuse me. That would most likely trigger a special event where the city would get input. But if a festival was, say, held in a private location, such as an abandoned retail space, we would get no input as to security, the participants, anything like that under the state law. So what we are asking this evening is that you authorize the local licensing authority to the ability to review and approve festival permits. And along with that, set the application fee at $150 payable to the municipality.
Thank you. Any council members have questions? I'll turn it over to members of the public and see if there are any comments on this tonight. Seeing none, back over to council. All right. Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it. As the former, I may be the only member of council that ever served on the licensing authority. I might be wrong about that. But anyway, as a former member of the licensing authority, I'll go ahead and move ordinance number 18, series 2020.
And just for the record, 1818. I just
what did I say?
It.
Yes.
You may have said that. I just wanted to.
Sorry.
Is there a second? Great. Second. And I'll thank you for that. And so I'll just turn it back over to the public for their final round of public comment. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council and close the public hearing. And I'll ask if there's any other discussion on that motion. Seeing none, could we please have a roll call vote?
Mayor Stolzman?
Yes.
Councilmember Fahey?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Maloney?
Yes.
Councilmember Brown?
Yes.
Councilmember Lipton?
Yes.
Councilmember Lay?
Yes.
Councilmember Dickinson?
Yes.
Thank you. Could I please get a motion on the resolution?
Make a motion to approve resolution number 73, series 2021.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, everyone. That takes us to council informational comments on pertinent. No, it doesn't. Sorry about that. That takes us to our update on our city manager's recruitment process. I'm going to turn it over to our council members who've been working on that for us. Mayor Pro Tem Maloney and Council Member Fahey, if you'd like to tell us what you'd like to tell us.
Councilor Fahey, do you want to go first?
No, I will defer to you.
Okay. In your packet on page 1033, can't believe it's over 1,000 pages, but you know, we are working within the schedule. So the schedule that the team here in the city and the consultant have laid out, we believe we are working within this time frame. There's some minor things that are a little bit different, but I do want to point out the virtual or in-person interviews that we're talking about, which are November 17th, 18th, and 19th. So those 3 days in there. We are working on what that schedule looks like, and we have more details. I will let you know. I will tell you the difference between having 3 finalists and 5 finalists makes it very complicated and spreads out the time frame. And so we won't know the finalist until probably November the 9th. And at that time, we will be able to provide you more information and a more updated schedule. But for your scheduling for the future for this very, very important task, those 3 days, most likely the 18th and 19th will be days that we'll be doing interviews. And the idea is that we will interview each of the candidates by ward. So for example, Councillor Dickinson and Councillor Lay, if he's reelected, we'll interview all of the candidates as one group. And we will do the same with Ward 2 and Ward 3. The mayor will individually interview all the candidates. We'll take all that input. The staff is going to be broken into 2 groups, the staff being the directors and department heads, and them as well as the public input we will get from the night of the 17th when we plan to do a public forum. All that will be available to council as input to the decision process. So more to come on this. I just want to give you a chance to ask any questions about the scheduling, what to expect, or anything else. But I just want to make sure you're aware of the time frame as ahead of possible. So any questions, comments, thoughts?
I just want to thank both Mayor Pro Tem Maloney and Councilmember Fahey for working on this for us, and the consultant and the staff who've helped on this as well. If we could just make sure on the next document that comes out that community review is identified as like a community open house input session, so people know that there'll be a process where they can interview the finalists and provide direct feedback to council, because that's been something that the community's always been very engaged in and has helped us tremendously in the past. So just making sure that that's clearly identified.
Absolutely. I'm just looking at the draft that we're working on it, and currently we're looking at that being the first day in the evening at the rec center. And so you're absolutely right. We need to make sure that that is publicized in the schedule. People are aware of it, and you know we communicate with the public so that they get a chance to meet the candidates and provide input to that process. So absolutely, that's a very good comment.
Thank you very much. Any other comments from members? Turn it over to the public. Any comments on this one tonight? RJ Harrington. I think we accidentally unmuted Dave instead of RJ. There we go.
Here, RJ Harrington, 457 East Raintree Court. And my comment is predominantly centered on using sustainability as a lens. I'll first, I should say second, since I already made that comment, make a, I would say apology. That's not the right word. I referenced that I'll be dead soon earlier in the public comments regarding the building code. Yes, that is in reference to the fact that I just turned 56 last week, but also because my father died recently. And so I've not been able to follow all of council deliberations, most especially on this very important matter. So if you've already discussed the fact that sustainability is going to be one of your critical criteria for evaluating new city manager position, that is fantastic. Secondly, and I support that and suggest that it's critical. Secondly, I note that Mayor Pro Tem Maloney, you reference the open house for all of us citizens on the 17th. That is in conflict with Lewisville Sustainability Advisory Board meeting that evening. I think I heard reference to it being more of a all-day affair, but if I'm wrong, just note that several very important members of our community, including probably myself as a citizen adjutant, will be present at the LSAB meeting that evening. And that concludes my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other members of the public care to comment on this agenda item? All right, that takes us back over for council. Any other council questions or comments? All right, well, thanks once again. And we look forward to the different input input parts to the process. And really can't thank you enough for all the extra work that you guys are putting in and the extra hours. And so we all have to remember when we go past their house to drop off cookies and sandwiches and things like that to help them out, keep them well fueled. All right, so that takes us to our city attorney's report.
Thank you, Mayor. I have no report this evening.
All right, any council comments, committee reports, and identification of future agenda items? All right. Seeing none, going once.
I can make one quick comment, and that's that the CC4CA's annual conference is going to be happening on Thursday and Friday of this week. And I'm looking forward to finding out all kinds of new ways to promote sustainability in the state.
Thank you, Councilmember Fahey. I look forward to hearing about it. Any other committee reports? All right, seeing none, we're adjourned. Thanks, everyone.